of the situation. Yeah, I was lucky to stay away from the virus so far.
Yeah, I know, me too. I had a few scares, but I'm good.
Thank God. Well, I guess
Oh,
we
cool.
are live. Looks like we are live. So, hi everyone. I'm Dana Chobota, aka Dana's Rose, and I'm so happy to welcome you today to the first episode of Song by Song on Backstagers in 2021. My guest today, all the way from LA, it's Jaime Bennington, singer, songwriter, and film director. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. I'm actually in Arizona.
Oh, you're in Arizona now. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. No,
so back.
LA was too much for me. I went home.
Okay, so back home for real,
Yes.
to the roots.
Yes.
How are you? How's 2021 going so far?
It's good. This year is actually really calm. I thought it would be more chaotic given last year, but um, just relaxing. There's no point in fighting it.
Yeah,
It's gonna be chaotic no matter what, right?
yes.
Um, just been meditating, honestly. Just all I've
Hmm.
been doing
Awesome.
all day, every day.
Okay. Well, it's a really good morning for America right now with everything that has happened yesterday. So,
Yeah,
just,
yeah. No, that's great.
yeah. Well, with 2020 being all marked by the pandemic, artists had a good time with themselves and were able to come up with new music. And it was your case as well. So, how did you come up with the idea of then? How it all started? Your-
um, let's see. I actually wanted to be in a rock band for obvious reasons when I was a teenager. And then I also was mortified by the idea because that just sounds ridiculous. Also, mostly because like everybody wants to be like their parents to some degree, whether they recognize it or not. And then when I started doing it, I was like, oh wait, um, that's a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not nearly as how do I say physical with the performance. I'm not. I'm more introspective, so I'm a lot more like thoughtful inside, and I dive into certain topics and express it in such a unique way, an articulate way. Whereas like somebody like my dad would write songs that maybe were more general so that they could apply to more people. And that's not a bad thing at all, right? I mean, his audience was the entire world, so you have to account for a lot of things in that. And so I didn't do anything for a long time, and then when he passed, I was uh, one of my favorite artists put out an album. I'm a massive Arctic Monkeys fan. They're one of my like pillars, right? And I just remember hearing Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino and just being like, oh, this is like the perfect album. Um, the only thing I can think of it like that comes second is like Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. And for me, that album kind of engaged my brain and my emotions in a way that that album did not. So Tranquility Base kind of like spurred me to think critically about songwriting because before all my music was in concert music. So I was writing classical music, contemporary classical music, and that was what was interesting to me at the time. And so when my father passed and that album came out, it really kind of changed my view on things, my scope. So I did like a deep dive on David Bowie, and I did a deep dive on Arctic Monkeys again, and I just kind of brought in a bunch of different influences and thought, what are the things that I love about what these people are doing, and what can I do to do that? And what happened is actually that I started two projects and I didn't finish either one of them.
Yeah.
And one was more like a surreal kind of like play on genre, where I took a bunch of things that I like Americana or rock and roll or ballads, and I did what I wanted with them. And then the other one was more of like really introspective, emotional music about the self and exploring that part of me in a way that I hadn't before. And I failed at doing both of those things because I did them both at the same time. And so I ended up putting both on hold for a long time. And then one day I was like, oh, I have like 30. Well, I had more music. I just didn't put it on the album. So it just was a matter of like sequencing and making sure everything flowed well. So you're actually looking at something that is an accumulation of multiple projects, and really has some of the songs have no bearing on the other, but they flow really well, and you would be able to tell that. So it kind of came down to like, well, this was my thought process for 3 years, and it feels like a thought process. So I will just put it out and say that's what it is because it is.
Okay.
And that's how that happened.
Uh-huh. And why did you choose the name then?
Uh, that's a good question because I wrote a short story called Now and Then,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it was referring to like the passage of time, and my kind of, I guess, ruminations on time and what that meant to me, and whether or not like I felt old in here, like I aged in here, as well as feeling like I aged as a person, like as my body aged,
Mm-hmm.
and the effects that had on me. And that kind of led to like a couple of thought experiments where I wrote these stories and kind of developed my writer's sensibility outside of music. And I thought, the phrase now and then is very interesting because I've come to the understanding that time is just we're living one long day and we just fall asleep because our body needs to sleep, but our mind doesn't sleep. So it became a fascinating concept to me. And I thought, well, then is better than saying the future,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at the time, I was writing something I wanted to present to people as two independent wholes later on. So it was a future project. And then, ironically, the future became the past, and it turned out totally differently than it was supposed to. So I just called it then because I was like, well, my future is my past, but also the things that started the album are also things that will motivate and have motivated the rest of my artistic expression. Um, Probably until I die. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so it's kind of almost ironic because then is uh, meaning future, but it's past tense. So, which I don't know if you would get, but the I think it's a funny concept, and that's why the cover of the album is also very um, ridiculous in itself.
I noticed there's a book behind you. Is that just by just just like that happened over there, or you put it on purpose? On
The book on in the picture,
mm-hmm.
oh, on purpose. Stanley Kubrick is a great director, and he has made some of my. I feel like he tapped into people in a weird way because he would put things in front of them symbolically that were so deep and endless. There's kind of like a boundlessness to them. I mean, if you watch Eyes Wide Shut, even though it's not finished, it's something that will change you. The Shining is horrifying more terrifying every time I watch it because I realize what's going on more and more every time I watch it. So it's not actually as mundane as it seems. It's not as average as it seems. It's actually a pretty depthless movie or film in its own right. Um, and so I was reading him at the time. That's a book on all of his movies. So all of his movies, a documentary style, like exploration of the way that those movies were made, his thought process, and his personal development, which also pertains to what the album is, right? So I found him fascinating, and I also related to him on a deeper level because I related to his earlier movies, his earlier films, which were self-funded and kind of against the grain. And that's when if he didn't do those, he wouldn't have done the things that he did later. And it was challenging. It was very, very difficult for him to do that. And I'm doing that, or I've been doing that for like probably actually about the same length of time, maybe a little less than 3 years, but um, that's how long I've been working on my short film, and that's coming out next month. So I'm like it has everything in that picture has meaning.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know, but the shirt is it's Deadpool
Okay.
riding chimichangas like surfboards.
It looked very familiar to me.
Yeah. It's Deadpool riding surfboard chimichangas, and it's so ill fitting for me. If you could see how it actually sits on me and not in that blocking, it looks horrible. And I thought it was funny because like I'm thinning up here, but I'm like combing my hair back. So there's like a seriousness about having those elements in this picture and this image of what this album is. That's both extremely playful and kind of like, well, let's not take ourselves too seriously, and then also being like, but there are things to take seriously. So yeah, the book is it's not mine. It's Stanley Kubrick's.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
meaning that I owned it, but it's written about Stanley Kubrick. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Just to clarify.
Okay. Now that we touched about your short movie coming out, maybe we can start with a chant and tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about more about this project.
Yeah. Well, it's a short. I've talked about it a lot. It's funny because I think about it. I'm like, dude, I've talked about it for a year now,
Mhm.
over a year, probably almost two, and all I can show people is like backstage or like behind the scenes,
Mhm.
like videos I took or pictures because I it's not done. COVID kind of really messed it up, and so I'm actually going to release the film unfinished because I'm light years ahead of where I was, but also it's good in its own right, even with the unfinished elements. And there was a big risk in taking on like an independent film and like one adapting something from a popular author and then making it much bigger than its original setting, which it is a 100 line poem,
Yeah.
and I turned it into like a 35-minute short film. And at this point, it's like everybody's done all they can do, and there's no money and there's no time. I mean, there's plenty of time, but like you have to choose your battles, right? If I'm moving on to the next thing, I got to move on. But also, like again, people have been waiting for it for a long time. The people who are still aware of it, and it's just time. I mean, 2021 is a good time to touch on these topics openly, and it also has I need to let it go because it has I wrote it based off my personal experience with mental illness.
Mhm.
So I have to, I'm past that.
Yes.
And it'll be great to review it with other people and share it and connect with other people. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm already past that. And, I've already uh, closed the book on a few things.
So good.
So I'm not even the same person, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's really fun. I got to watch we're actually working on the credit sequence right now. We're on our fourth editor, so it's yeah. COVID will do that to you. And we're just finishing up a few SFX shots and reviewing the end credit sequence, making sure everybody is in there because a lot of people gave their time and effort into this, especially with the crowdfunding. Right, I think something like 115 people put money into it, so it's making sure everybody's accounted for, making sure that the album's ready to go for the backers, and doing all that. So it's really cool, and I'm really excited.
I
But
look,
it will be out on the first of next month.
okay. So
Yeah,
February, we look forward to it.
yeah, and it will be on my YouTube, so it'll be totally free. Nobody has to rent it. I'm not going to monetize it. I'm just going to put it out there as like an expression of the self, right? So, um,
I'll make sure
but
to
yeah,
in the description of this video the link to your YouTube and to the socials as well.
okay,
People can
perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
welcome. Okay, so I say let's go to song by song
Yeah, let's do
and
it.
talk about the inspiration behind every single track from your debut EP.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's much to say about the first one, Welcome, but let's see.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I started the whole concept. I love Alex Turner. I love him. He's my spirit animal. I say that all the time because it's true. I find like unbridled. Sorry, I was going to pull up the lyrics so I could remind myself of what all the things that I said, but I don't need it. I know what I said. Here's me being nervous. Um, but no, I love Alex Turner, and maybe I gush too much about him, but I mean, he's truly like an unbounded creative force, and uh, I I don't know. I think everything he's done, whether it's the Arctic Monkeys or the Last Shadow Puppets or some of his like indie EP stuff, like it's all touched me in a way that made me want to explore that musical element of my life in a different way every time. And so my kind of like um, thought was that the original album, which Welcome was going to be the title track as well, was going to be like if he was actually like a lounge, an actual lounge performer, like a Vegas residency kind of artist. If he was that for that hotel and casino, and so through that, I was just going to talk about what the future could look like, and give it that same pizzazz because I think for me more than musically, it's probably lyrically. I think he's probably one of the most creative um, people out there with David Bowie and Tyler the Creator and people like that. Where I'm like, oh wow, like you said something that made no sense and it made all the sense. If you really sit down and look at it, you're like, I don't know if those things connect if you didn't put them in that order. And that's really important because that's how our brains work, right? It's more by association than anything else. Mm-hmm. And so my idea was just to associate through that lens, through that tranquility based lens of reality, um, kind of interpret what the future might be. And so it's very theatrical in a lot of ways. I've gotten a lot of comments, right, where it's like, well, try music theater. And I'm like, oh, I don't like musical theater at all. I know some people do, but honestly, I probably like singing songs in a lounge setting is probably, to me, more authentic than being at a musical because people don't dance and sing their way through life. Mm-hmm. They like beat up instruments and cry about it. And so that whole song was like, slowly like feeding in because almost everything on the album is like a demo. It's not finished. It's raw. It's like voice memos and it's like I'm sitting there and just being like they're literally all ideas, right? And the idea was to create something that was would let you know what was going on, right? So if you're sitting there and you're like, what's this album gonna be like? And then I'm like literally waxing on about life things, but in a way that's just so abstract. It's like, okay, so I'm going to apply that knowledge to everything else that's going to happen. And I wanted to include the sounds of life as if I were in a lounge. So I'm like walking around and drinking coffee and turning off my Xbox and like humming through it as if I'm getting ready to go. And then I do the song, and in the middle there's like an abrupt change to a different song, which I don't remember how that happened, but that's live, so that just happened. I just started playing the other song. I was working out some chords and stuff for the Scavenger Hunt song, and for whatever reason, right there at that moment where it shifts, I just was like, oh, I know where to go. I need to get it on record so that I can go back and do it again. And then I just broke into that and then came back to it. And for me, that felt natural. That felt like for me, that song almost became like a through line where I was like, oh, this is actually the most important song on the album at that time. And I think now too, because it is a through line, there are multiple versions of the song on that, on the EP.
I gotta say that lyrically, Scavenger Hunt is my favorite as well.
Yeah, well, it's the most well-rounded of the songs, I think. I think it's the most original of the songs and the most well-rounded because the concepts are so strong. But the music is also equally as strong and original. Whereas, like, picture pieces like Americana. And you're like, that's cool, right? Like, who doesn't love Marty Robbins? Who doesn't like the Cactus Blossoms? But, like, it's like a genre. It's like a pastiche. Like I'm just like, oh, I like that genre a little bit, so I'm gonna try that. Whereas like with this, it was like it felt like its own thing and has it's really rich. I think, which is why I keep coming back to it over time, and the
Mhm.
message of it is so important, and that's why it comes back. It inserts its own self into the first song. But yeah, the idea was just like, okay, I'm in a lounge and I'm sitting on a piano and there's a spotlight and I'm being dramatic to get your attention. And maybe I'm so dramatic you don't care and you're just like, well, this is interesting, but what the hell's going on? And that's fine too.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
And then
yeah.
you just move to the next one. Hey, oh, what happened? What happened? Sorry.
No, you're good.
It felt like everything was vanished from my phone. I hope we're still live. Okay, we're
Here.
still. God, live streams will kill me one day. I
I
swear.
know. I know. I had a little anxiety. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna come in late or something, or like I'm gonna have some weird tech issue. But it's all good. I don't even remember what the second song is, to be honest.
That's what I tried. I'm gonna look on my phone because if I
I
keep
know. I was gonna do that too.
it will happen for multiple times. It's Paper Moon.
Paper Moon. Ooh, yeah, Paper Moon. That was fun. That was oh, Picture Pieces isn't for a hot second, huh? Okay, so Paper Moon, um where did that come from? I think that was one of the first. I think I wrote those two back to back because they have similar vibes, instrumentals and everything. The chords are similar. It's very much a part of the same album that I was trying to do at the time. And what I was really concerned with there was like dreamscapes. And if you've ever read any of my short stories when I had a website, they're very like surreal and dreamlike, and literally they're dreams that I had. So I'm like writing about these things, and I've always been really interested in the language of dreams and like how they slip out so easily, and then sometimes you just remember them. Like either it's one or the other. You don't remember dreams, or you remember the whole thing.
It
Um,
happens to me all the time, and it's funny. I'm gonna share something with you. What I dream now usually happens in about a span of 3 years.
yeah,
Something
yeah. Well,
happens.
and that's me too. I have premonitions and things like that all the time. I like literally just dream of like exact moments that happen, and it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be a week, it could be a day. And it's been something I've always been interested in. I've had them since I was a child, and I amongst other things. And it's very interesting to me, like why they're hard to pin down in terms of language. Because when I might remember a dream 100%, and then the second I go to talk about it, I'm like, oh, I don't really have the words for that. Or like I don't know what to describe it as.
And
And for
you
me,
just keep on coming out. And
yeah, or like you tell it, and then you're like, wait, no, 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 that the one thing happened a different way.
yeah,
Just there's like one little thing, but the thing matters. And I was essentially um, into Carl Jung before I even knew who Carl Jung was. And when I found his work, I was like, oh, synchronicity, oh, dream work, oh, all this stuff. I was like, oh, that's super cool. I'm reading the Red Book right now, and I'm like, oh, this is so interesting because this is just my life. Like this is just how I've lived life. Like he's taking a scholarly approach, which is something I also value. And with this song, it was a little bit of both. It was an artistic and a scholarly approach, a linguistic approach. Like again, I was saying that Alex Turner's really good at writing lyrics that are associations more than they are direct connections. And that way it can be a lot deeper, right? So you're hearing something that doesn't really make sense, but it made sense. And that's interesting to me on a language level. So um, when I wrote that song, I actually didn't steal from Alex Turner. I actually stole from David Bowie. Young Americans. If you listen to Young Americans, and well, maybe I rubbed out all the kinks because I think what happened is originally it sounded like Young Americans, and I was like, Oh, well, that's a really interesting, unintentional thing that happened because the song is about young Americans. I'm a young American. I agree with his assessment of what American youth at that time was more likely to be engaged. The acts they were more likely to be engaged in, and I think that song is so good. That song, that whole album is amazing, but that song is so specific. And I was like, okay, David knows what's going on, which is funny because David's not from here. So either it's a correlation between both cultures, or he just is that good at putting on a character and understanding things when he's looking through certain lenses. And the idea of a character was already embedded in the album too. So um, I kind of was like, all right, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go express my deepest fears in a way that's like just the most ridiculous song, but it sounds good. It sounds well rounded. But when you really look at it, you're like, how did that phrasing work? How did that, like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. I don't know. I listened to it and I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Um, there were some notes hit there that were just totally unintentional, where like you put two concepts together and they mesh really well, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, there's magic there. And then there's also a bit of intentional magic where I'm like intentionally phrasing dreams in a certain way. By the end of it, I'm literally speaking gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just go full Bjork and just kind of like make shit up. Like, I don't know. I love that because in my mind, that's how it is when you're trying to, I mean, that's what anything is, right? Like when we speak to each other, all we're doing is barking, all we're doing is chirping. We interpret it as words, but right now I'm like, blah, 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 and you're like, oh yeah, I know what that means. And that is really interesting to me. And I think especially going out of the song, there's a thing where you hear key words, and so you don't really know what the whole thing is, but you can infer what it is by the key words given, and the melody kind of follows the chords, and so you're kind of put on autopilot for a second. No matter how funny it sounds, I think it's effective. And two, the idea was that the beginning of the song starts with, good dreams and ends with bad dreams. And dreams, in my opinion, dreams are just a manifestation of your subconscious, right? That's a Jungian thing to say, but it's true. Like, sure, there's random information. I mean, if you carve a block of wood, you're going to have wood chips. But ultimately, there's something there, and it's there for a reason. And so I talk about a lot of things. One of my premonitions was the tricycle death of my sister. I saw that. I stopped, and there's a lyric in there about a tricycle death, and what that was a reference to a premonition, which is a bad dream that my sister had died, and I actually did save her life by informing people of this premonition. I didn't think I should, and then, I kind of had to force myself to do it, because how do you, when somebody tells you something like that and there's no evidence, like how do you. But they did listen, and she is still here, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But there are also moments like Paper Moon in itself, which is a reference to not a Nat King Cole song, but a song that Nat King Cole covered that I love. I think that's one of the best covers of that song. I believe it's by his jazz trio. And the whole idea is like the intention behind things matters. And, the idea is like, it's not real unless you make it real.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically so, the dream is real, no matter how unreal you want it to be. You're learning something. And Paper Moon's so interesting because it talks about things like human attachment, and how those things seem to kind of like lose power when let's see, how do I say this? It's about human attachment and how those things can have differing degrees of effectiveness or efficiency or influence, depending on what that person's intention is putting it into that. Because everything's a machine. You put your intention into something, you get that thing out. Sometimes that's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I was dealing with a lot of emotions with friends and family that I was getting really close to or falling away from. and I was like, oh well, you know, um, there are some silly, lyrics that are outdated now, like it's a Barnum and Bailey world, honky tonk parade, things like that. But like, yeah, these things become something different when there's not that life of that relationship put into it. And I had suffered some heartbreak at the time too, and that really changed my perspective on life again, where I was like, oh, okay, do I need these things? Do I need to go through that? Was that necessary, or was that unnecessary?
You know,
And
I think every
yeah.
experience in life and every person that comes into our life
Hmm.
meaning, and they're there for.
Oh, absolutely. Everything has meaning. It's just how you interpret it. It's I'm a big believer in the fact that, for example, you only have one emotion, and it's how you interpret that emotion that gives it its quality, bad or good. Everything's neutral until you interact with it.
Yeah,
And I always equate it like, well, if you're in love, it's the same thing as being excited, right? We always say like, oh, I'm in love, it's so exciting. Well, because you equate the two of them together. But if you're really excited about something and you're like verbalizing it and you're aggressive, in the wrong context, it can actually give off the same vibrations as something like an angry fit of rage. And if you're interpreting it one way over the other, you could have very, very, very different responses to that. And but ultimately, they're the same thing, right? Or at least that's what I believe. And so that song's really about that, and it's not really about um, things being bad or good necessarily. It's about how things can look, right? So I'm not saying that the nightmares are horrible and they shouldn't happen and they're inconsequential and whatever. What I'm
some,
saying is that everything has a purpose.
yeah, and sometimes nightmares or bad dreams, let's say, are releasing the tension.
Yeah,
Or-
right. Yeah, yeah. They're alerting you to something deeper that needs to change because you're hurting because of it, or you could be hurt because of it.
or sometimes
Um,
they give you answers to questions that you had.
yeah, yeah, right. Or maybe you're asking a question and you're dreaming and something comes up and you're like, oh man, okay, that's a cool connection. So this is this because this, and I wouldn't have known that unless my mind symbolically formed these these kind of movies that I slip into when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but yeah, that's the whole thing.
speaking
Sorry,
about
what
that,
were you saying?
I watched the inauguration of Joe Biden last night, and it was like 4 a.m. when I fell asleep, and they were still playing and discussing and stuff like that. And then all night I dreamed I was back in America doing all sorts of
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll have dreams and I'm like, I see all the familiar faces. I
Mhm.
know the location. I recently, like over the last couple of days, I've had um, different dreams in the same location. So it's like I don't know if you ever seen the movie Black Bear with
Uh,
Aubrey Plaza. She's like a director writer who writes. She stars in her own movies, and they're expressions of her struggles at the time. And so it restarts at the same point every time, but every time it's a different story, and every time there's a black bear involved at some point.
yeah, sounds familiar. Hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool. And if you haven't seen it, see it. It's great. She's Aubrey Plaza is one of those characters where you're like, where the I mean, I know where you came from, but like how did you get where you are? And the only answer is because yeah, she's that good. Um, and this is a movie that's just like really, really good if you want to know if you want to see something I'm talking about and you want to see it acted out. All this stuff I've been saying, watch Black Bear. Um, but it's really interesting, and I've been having these dreams where like I'm in the same location and they start off almost in the same way, but it's a whole different cast with a whole different purpose and a whole different thing going on. And every time it's just like the trippiest thing, right?
Yeah,
I got to think there's something down there trying to speak to me. I can't quite access
yeah,
in my waking moments.
happens to me all the time. Like I
Yeah,
have a childhood dream that keeps coming back, keeps coming back.
yeah, yeah,
But it's good. I mean, in reality, it turned out well.
yeah. Good. I mean, it could just be that you're really you're really in tune, you're in touch with that thing, and maybe that's a through line through your life. Maybe you'll have that until you die. Who knows?
Oh,
That'd
I'm not
be
100% sure.
I don't know. Who knows? I mean, things tend to do not what we want them to do, but what they want to do,
Mhm.
and that's a really important
And also,
lesson.
put project something into your mind, even in dreams, I believe that the universe somehow turns out things in your favor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I mean, I feel like the more dreams you have, probably the more synchronicity you experience. Probably
Mm-hmm.
the more meaningful coincidence you experience. Um, but those things happen to me all the time in small waves. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's also a part of the song too. Is like, you can hear about all the nightmares that I'm having, or you can hear about, oh wow, he's so jaded. He had such a good thing in the beginning, and now he's all sad. And but I'm not sad. I don't have any feelings towards it at all. I think it's a really catchy tune. I think it's really fun, and I think the reason it falls into gibberish is literally because it's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
It's all relative to what you I don't know what the word is, but like to what you want to experience, because it's all a choice too. You can choose to be sad about it, or you can choose not to be sad about it. That doesn't mean ignore it. Denial's not a part of that equation, but processing things is, and you can be happy or sad if you want to be happy or sad.
Oh. Uh,
Yeah,
let's move on to Gallant.
Gallant. Oh God, that was supposed to be a song. Like that wasn't supposed to be just an instrumental. Um, it was supposed to be. I just kind of like. I think I took the lounge thing into um, like a literal, like how can I make this image a sound?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking like a guy dressed up like on stage, like again like the lounge singer thing. These three things are from the same album, so and then the next one is where it breaks off. And so with this idea, I'm still the same character, and the idea is like I love the idea of like live shows in the sense that they can have different intros, outros, different solos. The song can change drastically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like SZA goes out and she does different verses for her songs, and you can't hear them on the album, but you can hear them if you go to her show. And there's something really powerful about that, because it brings people in more, because they're like, oh, I got something from this I literally couldn't get anywhere else.
Yes.
And it doesn't even matter if you watch it, because what she's putting into those verses that you don't hear is intention for something else that it just doesn't work the same when you're it's not a movie. If you've got a cell phone recording of a show, it's not the same thing as being at the show.
Definitely.
um,
That's the magic.
and yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's magic. And it's so fascinating to me how these things happen. I wrote a lot of like instrumental pieces around that album, including one later, which is like, I think it's Blip,
Yeah.
which is like a guitar piece. And the reason I did those pieces is because I wanted segues, I wanted different intros, I wanted to find ways to modulate into different pieces of music. So if I was going from Welcome to Paper Moon and I didn't want to just go back to back, I could put something like Gallant in between. But also, the intention behind the music changes, and my intention with that piece was like, okay, well, I want to be. Whereas the album was like very specific melodies and harmonies, very sure chords, very like direct movement in all the levels, and the vocals and the melodies of the piano and the voice and the chords that surrounded them. I want it to be so specific that you could just hear it and you'd know exactly where the next chord was. You didn't have any questions. And you could almost like disengage from the song because it was so straightforward. And then later with this other album, which I was going to do, which was an EP that was more visceral, it was more like major seven chords and ambiguous tones and things like that. And with that being said, I wanted to articulate a mood as a vibe as specifically as possible. And what I tried to do, Gallant, if you look up the definition, it's very specific what the word means. And actually, I could probably look it up right now, because otherwise you're going to be like, yeah, but what did you say? Because you didn't say it. Let's see, Gallant. Let's look up a definition. Um, I know it, but I don't want to be wrong.
Also in
This,
Romania. This word.
um, um, yeah, so like achieving a sense of satisfaction or an enjoyment in something.
Mhm.
And it's a circular chord progression that starts over and over, descending. And I think there's a sense of satisfaction in that with the surety of the notes for me, because one of the things I struggle with as like a live, I studied piano performance in college, and I had my like 100,000 hours in before I was in high school. Like I was like a piano crackhead. I couldn't do anything but play. And the one thing I could never do, and it made me so mad, was be so clear and intentional with the notes. And like there's no slipping, there's no muddling the attack of the note. There's no like the pedaling is very specific, and in a lot of ways it's almost like a beginner's ensemble piece. If you were to play it out loud, you could probably play it with two people. You could probably do an analysis of it, and it's so specific and so like almost impressionistic. And I was so happy with it because I didn't mess it up. Like it was so perfect. I was like, I can't do that again. I'm not going to do it again. And that was a big deal to me because I was trying already to articulate certain things, and I was having trouble articulating. And with this one track, it felt like I fully articulated that. And also, it's moody. I mean, if I were to play it live, be like one of those segues. You're like, oh, okay, whoa, where are we at? Almost in a way where like Dark Side of the Moon takes like a song and then does an instrumental of the song that's like totally wacky with the song after it. Where if you listen to like Us and Them and then Any Color You Like, I think that's the order. They're the same song but they're very different, and they disengage you from where you were at and just kind of throw you somewhere else. So there are a couple pieces on the album that were designed to do that. But in terms of the satisfaction element, I was also trying to do something kind of sexy. Like it sounds weird, but like the strong chords and like there's always this like image for some reason. I don't understand why, but there's this thing where like people kind of fetishize piano players, especially male piano players in rock bands. They're like, oh, dude, yeah, that guy's so fucking cool. Like, oh my god. And I imagine this guy, like this character I was putting on for a second, like knew that
Mhm.
and was like playing with people. Like I'm gonna give you exactly what you want.
Playing with people's
And
minds.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mind game. It's a little bit of like because my imagination on it would be like Spotlight again, just like real broody, and people just kind of get off on that. They connect to it in a weird way where they're like, oh my god, it's so introspective, and you're like, yeah, but also like I'm also doing it to be cool.
Mhm.
And there's something so cool about that track for me where I was like, I think I got it. I think I nailed that. Um, and it sounds big. Like that's the thing too. Is like I don't play a lot of notes. The chords aren't very big. It's the phrasing of them, the shape of the chords descending. Um, it feels gargantuan in a lot of ways, which ties into the idea of wanting to mess with people and seem bigger than you are. And for me too, speaking less and saying more is better than speaking more and saying nothing at all.
Mhm.
And so when that track was like composed, literally composed, it wasn't a song, composed, it was very intentional. Like, this is huge. This is beyond me. This is meant to trick people into thinking that. And if you're playing it in a show, like whether you're literally playing it in something small, like I did a show at the Lucky Strike bowling alley in LA,
Mhm.
which was horrific. It was so fun. I messed everything. I played most of these songs live, and I
It was
fucked up every single one of them.
it was the 80s show, right?
Sorry.
The It wasn't the show with many artists celebrating the
No,
80s.
no, 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 no. That was after. So that show with the charity event was before, and then
Uh-huh.
after that, I went and did my show.
Okay. Mhm.
And I literally fucked up every song. I didn't. I At one point I started singing. I think it was Paper Moon, and I was like, "Well, I wrote the fucking thing, but I can't sing it, so I don't know what's going on." And then at one point I was just doing. I did like an electric guitar version of Welcome. That was like had this horrible solo in it, and I kind of embodied the character of like, well, I don't give a fuck. Like, this is just going to go where it goes, and people are either going to like it or they're going to hate it. And And so many people came up to me afterwards and were like, dude, you're just so charismatic. Like, oh my God. Like they were high-fiving me and like, dude, what do you do? Like, where'd you come from? I'm like, what? Okay. Like they were kind of infatuated with the imperfection of the performance.
Mhm.
Like it was so bad that they didn't know that it was, I don't know if they didn't know it was like supposed to be better or if they just, um, they enjoyed the fact that I was willing to accept the failure at every turn with a smile and comedy, I guess, because I literally said I forgot one of the songs, like I started singing it and I blacked out and I was like, I'm not doing this one, and then I just moved on to the next one, and they're all like, okay, yeah, cool, cool, cool. He's really sure of himself. But that ties into that track specifically because I to Gallant because I was specifically going for it to take this image, and I think if I played it at that kind of venue, it would have the same mysterious impact
Mhm.
as it would if I were in a big stage with a lot of reverb and the sound of a huge crowd, which I had a lot of experience growing up getting to see,
Mhm.
seeing the way like Linkin Park, for example, does segues or revamps their songs or goes acoustic or does whatever. And with such a vast arena of like literally like there's no space between the people and they're like 100,000 people in one spot. You're like, holy shit, like these people are, it's a wave of human flesh. That's crazy. And I think in either context, whether it's stripped down or in a big arena, like something like that would just resonate.
Song to fit any kind of venue.
Yeah, it just resonates regardless, and that's the intention. It was supposed to be a transition piece,
Okay.
um, um, but yeah, so long winded, but there you go.
Then it's picture pieces, which I said that musically it's my favorite.
Yes, that's so interesting. That's um, okay. So I'm a huge fan of like Americana, like country music.
Mhm.
Like I said, Marty Robbins earlier. Big Iron and songs like those are just so good. There's a certain well, there's a Mexican quality to the music because he was working a lot out of Texas and all these, places with a large Mexican cultural influence. And I love flamenco and I love like the chords. They're stacked differently. They go into each other differently. Um, and I've seen Coco, the movie Coco, the Pixar movie once,
Mhm.
but I've listened to Michael Giacchino's score like 100 million times because he went out of his way to embody that harmonic difference between American music and Mexican music, and there's just something about it. Like I'm a big fan of Kali Uchis. I don't know if you know who Kali Uchis is, but she's pretty big over here right now, and she like I just fucking love it. I don't know what it is. There's a vibe about it. Maybe it's the cultural difference. Maybe it's the soundscape that um, I watched Selena, the
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
recently, which I didn't know what that was. So watching it, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool! She's so cool! I wonder where she's at now." And then the end comes, and you're like, "Oh my god!"
yeah.
Um, we watched the whole last show after we watched the movie. We watched the whole last concert that the movie starts with, and dude, I just something I don't know if it's my age too. I mean, my taste might have just refined itself, but I basically like I love the way that the music is expressed from a totally unique standpoint of a culture far from mine, and I've always been that way. Battlestar Galactica is one of my favorite television shows of all time, and Bear McCreary used influences of like um, Middle Eastern music, which is like super reductive and probably offensive. So I apologize if that is. But he used music from that entire region, Asia, Europe, places like I'm trying to think of a specific place. I'm trying to think of specific instruments, which it's all arbitrary. The point is that the cultural difference in music has always been fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And there's something about the Mexican American like tone that is really fascinating. It's kind of folky, but it's kind of rock and roll, and it's kind of also like like a street band quality. Like if you were to walk down the street and hear like a mariachi band, there's all those things kind of blend together. And I'm a huge fan of the Cactus Blossoms. I don't know if you've heard of them or if anybody else has, but they're just two brothers who started off, you know, from my understanding, they're two brothers who just started off kind of like copying, like covering Americana, and then they were like, well, we kind of know it now, like the genre in and out, and we grew up on it, so we can make our own albums. And they have two albums, and they're just perfection. They're just Americana perfection. And for me, I wanted to do that, and then also do something also similarly surreal to the other two songs. And talk about dreamscapes. And actually, I don't think you can tell, but if you look at the language in the song, it's very aggressive and violent. There's a violence to it. You know, like the fire's so much hotter when you're not around, things like that, where you're like, oh, I was hoping that language would encourage the listener to pay attention to the context of the song. But if it didn't, I would hope that the listener never notices. And then one time they notice, they're like, wait, what is he saying? Because that would be really fascinating to me, to see that response. Because I always love songs where I'm like, I think I'm singing the lyrics the whole time, like for like years. And then I hear it and I'm like, wait, that's not what that says? Oh my God. You know, like what an idiot. I've been singing this at parties. I've been singing this to myself in my room. You know, like, but the whole song is in the context of like a car accident. And it's literally like, oh, I think we're going to crash. Oh, we're crashing. Oh my God, I'm burning alive. This is horrible. Oh my God, you're dead in the seat next to me. Fuck. Like, I really wish you were here to experience this with me right now. And then the song ends with like, you know, is it the same for you? Like, are you thinking about me too? Like, did you think about me when you died? And am I like, I'm thinking about you when I'm going to die. And then, you know, like, I want to spend some time in mine with you. So, you know, come on in. And the idea is that you just like, he died or they died. And they're just like living spiritually with the other person for a second. Whether that's like, you know, they meet in the afterlife or it's a literal, like in that moment, displacement of thoughts and feelings. I don't know. But I guarantee nobody thinks that. I thought that was the context of the song. But I thought, well, wow, this is one of the fun things to do with songs. Is like you write something poppy and happy and upbeat, and you use specific language to convey a point. But because it's happy, you don't really feel the gravity of it, and it works on you in certain ways. And I hadn't at the time heard of Rex Orange County, but Rex Orange County does it perfectly. And when I started putting the album together, that was one of those ones where I was proud of it, but I wasn't really sure if I should put it on because it's kind of like a pastiche thing again, but like strictly where I was like specifically trying to do something generic and whether it fit or not. And I was like, I listen to Rex all the time. Yeah. I do not care if it's copycatting or whatever. I'll do it. And so I'm glad that you like it because
well, I'll tell you where it takes me, pictures pieces. I see myself dancing a tango. But there's a specific place where I've been in, let me get it straight, El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora de la Reina de Los Ángeles.
Whoa. Oh my God.
It's
near Los Angeles?
It's in LA. It's a famous train station, Union. Okay, right there.
Really? So you see yourself next to or inside a train station doing the tango?
Yes, and getting out right there to the Mexican Pueblo de Los Angeles. It's there.
That's so fascinating. See, that's cool, and I actually like that because even though the song may contain a sad instance, there is like a celebration of the instance. It's not bad or good. It's a thing that happened. Okay. And most people will be like, well, yeah, horrific car accident would be horrible. Well, yeah. I mean, the experience would be really fucking shitty. Like, I don't want to burn alive in the car, and I don't want to see the person next to me die. Okay. Especially if there's somebody I love. I don't want that. But with that being said, life moves on anyways, and things will happen, and that's Bad things happen all the time, and it's how you interpret them. So the music is joyful because it is joyful, you know. And Picture Pieces is also like the title of the song is also, you know, it's like either picture this as fragmented pieces, which it is, of the same vision, or, you know, this is pieces of myself.
Okay.
This is pieces of my intellect and my emotional self. And so you're seeing me through a different lens. Either way, it works. It's like a fractal or a prism,
Mm-hmm.
or both. They can both be simultaneously existent. Okay. But yeah, that is. That's so cool that you think about that so specifically. That's
Yes, that's where it took me, and yeah, it's nice.
yeah.
I love to
That's
listen to songs and always imagine myself in a place. I mean, music takes me somewhere every time.
yeah. No, that's good. That's
Uh,
what it's supposed to do.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking about good vibe tunes, but with sad message, 21 Pilots, I think it's a good band that does that sometimes.
They do that. Yeah. Yeah. I love their style of songwriting is endlessly infuriating to me. But I love the sections that they write, you know, because it's more like loops of the same sections. I love the sections. The sections are purely wonderful music, and but repetition always kills me. I just can't. I used to listen to them a little bit, and then I was like, dude, in one song you say the same thing 4 times. The song's 5 minutes.
Mhm.
I gotta move on. You know, like I don't know, because like Igor is one of my favorite albums.
Uh-huh.
Tyler, the Creator's album that he won
Okay.
that Urban Award for. God, I can't believe they gave him an Urban Award. It's so stupid. His speech was beautiful, but he deserves something maybe a bit more specific.
Words nowadays don't,
They don't mean anything, and he was right when he said that. And
and the
it's
genre boundaries are they don't apply anymore, especially to Grammys. What I
they're
know.
either too rigid or people just don't even consider them. And the thing is like when you award somebody for their landmark achievement in the art that they have lived their lives by, don't give them an urban award because they're black. Like, come on, man, are you kidding me? Like, that's just offensive. It's just offensive.
That,
He deserved like a pop award or like I don't know, like whatever. I don't know what awards there are because I stopped following that stuff a long time ago. But not that. And I know exactly what their intention was. It was, well, he is that good, but we don't want him to know that he's that good. So we're going to give him something that will
yeah.
put him in his place
Mhm.
as the black artist that he is. America's so fucking weird. Okay. Anyways, Igor's really great, and the sequencing is really great.
Yeah.
Um, and there's repetition, obviously, in any song. But with Tyler, the cool thing he does is like every verse or every chorus is recontextualized a little bit. There's like a different lyric or a different melody or something's changed. Um, and as great as 21 Pilots is in their section writing and in terms of like the pieces that they write their songs in, um, it's fantastic. I just, if you're gonna do it, like put more meaning every time. In my opinion, every time a song is written, you should be adding something more to it. So even though, for example, in Picture Pieces, and this is great because in Picture Pieces, it's probably the most repetitious song on the album. There's that refrain that's the chorus in it, and at the end it happens twice. And but every time it happens, it's preceding new information that makes it a different song.
Yeah.
So by the end of it, you're like almost melancholy because you're like, wait, what just happened? What just occurred? But yeah, that's great. I love that. Not to say that I'm hating on 21 Pilots. They're doing great, obviously. But, you know, like,
Yeah, I got it.
I'd rather listen to Igor 100 times.
Car accident is up next, and I want to ask you if this,
An actual car accident song.
no, if this has any connection with something that you posted on SoundCloud. There was a track. I believe it's two
An
people.
elephant.
Yeah, an elephant.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Hmm.
uh, no, car accident. I drove for Lyft for a long time in LA.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I did it like 40 hours a week.
Wow.
And it was incredibly miserable. um, LA traffic is just a monster that has come to life through the wills of 100 million different people. And it is truly alive, and it's incredibly, or sorry, it's massively vindictive. And I used to take people on drives that were like 20 miles, and they took 2 hours. And I'm just like, dude, I can't. And I actually stopped because I was forced to stop. Um, I was experiencing like a lot of physical pain, like sitting in a chair like that for 40 hours a week is like, well, crazy. And I just like my back was hurting, and all these things were being affected, and I was miserable, and I was like only doing the job not because I wanted to do it, which that's never a good way to do anything. You should always want to do what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just going to end up probably resenting the thing. And because the expectation is that it will give you something, and if you're not giving yourself something as well, then it doesn't really work out very well. And I ended up going through Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. And there's a 5-stop intersection. Okay. So five stop signs. And it was my turn, and I went, and this guy just didn't stop. And he T-boned me directly in the middle of my car. And I had a passenger with me for Lyft. Mm-hmm. And by some odd chance, he hit the side that the passenger was a female, and most passengers sit like diagonal. So they sit, if I'm I'm driving left front, they're in back right, so that they can see me and I can see them. Mm-hmm. It's like a weird like thing that people do. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's out of like fear or wariness or what, but they do that because I don't know why, but you have to see the person that's driving, and I almost feel weird because I have to see the person I'm driving. So it's a two-way street. And this person got in on the right behind me, which was odd because that's not how that usually works. She purposefully went around to that seat. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, whatever, it's just a normal drive. And this guy hit me, and he hit me on the side she would have been on.
Oh my God.
So it was like one of those freak things where like
guardian angel, good job.
Intuition worked on somebody's side. Yeah. And I remember seeing it, and I remember seeing the guy come. Like I saw him like right there, and I was like, oh well. And he hit me, and I spun out. And then this is a funny story, which is why I'm telling the whole thing. I pull over, and I get out, and all these people are going, and the guy hit me so hard that his license plate was fixed to the front of his car. Oh. His car, and it was like stuck in my car. It like came off his car. And it turned out that he had a car full of kids. It was like his kid, and maybe they were all his kids, but I think it was like his kid and his kid's friends, and they were all on their phones, all of them, all 4 of them. Uh-huh. And he was like, there was no stop sign, and I was like, you just turn around, turn around, like everybody, there's a stop sign for everybody. And we waited for the cops or whatever to come and take the statement. And then his kid was like, they all stepped out of the car, and his kid was like, he was just like headphones in, and he was just standing there, and we made eye contact, and he went, and I was like, sure. And I'm getting this guy's information, and I see this kid, and I look at I like make him look at the license plate, and I pull out of my car. And I watch him. We're making eye contact, and I walk over to his dad, and I'm like, "Here, this is yours." And he just starts laughing. It was really funny. And then I look over, and my passenger's out of the car getting into another lift.
Yeah.
Whoa. She just leaves, and I was like, "Well, you're not supposed to do that. You could have a concussion. Something could be wrong." I had whiplash for a little bit. It wasn't horrible, but then Lyft, when you work for them, they tell you to go through their insurance, and they didn't help me at all. Wow. They refused to help me. And then by the time I got my insurance involved, they were like, well, we're not going to pay you anything. And I was like, so I got my car fixed.
It wasn't even your fault.
I know. They didn't give me any workers' compensation, nothing. And that's when I left, because I was like, I'm not doing that. And so so this is all relative because, or relevant, because this song, car accident song, is me dealing for the first time with not having a job and being forced out of a job
Mm-hmm.
and having to stay home and just watch all my money disappear because rent is very expensive. Not being able to sleep because my apartment was on the 405 in Burbank, which is like a major exit, and so I was street level and semi trucks all day, all night, cars all day, all night, homeless people walking around causing noise and distractions, and all night. I never slept there. I never felt good. Nothing. I was always stressed out beyond belief. And I wrote this song in one day, and I was just like so mad. And the thing that musically interested me with it was that I was again more so working in abstractions and associations than I was working in direct statements. There's something about a corporate haiku in there because I was dealing with these impossible riddles that these Lyft was giving me and then my insurance is giving me, and I was just like, oh my god, I just want to eat. That's all I want is I want to keep the power on and I want to eat. You know, and so I wrote that song out of spite for my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't write very many spiteful songs, and so it had to be special, And I remember kind of thinking like I think the Arctic Monkeys had just released their EP anyways, or sorry, like an extra song like a B-side, and I loved the way it was arranged,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved the way that Alex was talking, and so in that way it was a tribute to them on a very direct level, but also it was a way for me to kind of show off my like ability to wrap my mind around form, because the beginning of the song is the end of the song, and I start the beginning of the song right at the first verse, and then when we come back to the end of the song is the beginning of the song. It plays out and it goes longer than the lyrics. So there was a kind of like circular thing also going on with this song that I was really proud of, and the phrasing around it was so unique. Um, and I know it sounds like kind of like an avant-garde jazz song, but it it was so rock and roll, I feel, to me, and the way that it kind of abandoned like the way that I would typically think about language, and I would typically think about form of song, and it was one of those things I later tried to replicate even further with the form. So at the same time, I was working on Paper Moon, which is why they're both surreal songs with disjointed language.
Mm-hmm.
And the one of the things I was experimenting too with was extending parts of the words to like mold over the like to form fit the notes, and that sounds so strange. It sounds almost like there's a type of like contemporary classical singing that I was kind of embodying at that time. Just for a second, I was interested in it, but it's like trailing off. Like if you're like ooh like that at the end of everything, and it feels kind of super casual. But I can't remember if it was the Rite of Spring or what. But there's a vocal piece that was in my mind the entire time. I still don't know what it is, that I heard in school when I was studying music. That just kept coming back to me, and I was like, "That's such a unique, like such a." I thought it was a weird vocal thing to do in the first place, and then I was like, "What would that sound like in a contemporary setting, like in a song setting?"
Mm-hmm.
So um, that song I'm actually really really proud of, probably more so than anything else. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like all the other lyrics, but I think lyrically it's one of the strongest and most probably zany, like off the wall, and musically the most sound. But that's one of those songs where I was like, oh, this is totally original. Like if I did a whole album like this, people would be like, oh my god, what genre is it? Because it's not. It's such a far out there thing, and there's nothing else like it on the album either.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a real car accident. And An Elephant was actually a short story I wrote many years ago. Like I put that out a couple months ago, Probably like 6 months at this point, 6 months. But I don't remember. But probably longer. Time molds into one thing for me. So that was a short story I wrote, and I always write things. I used to always write things that I didn't realize had like an immediate root in my reality, and be like, oh, I wonder what it means. And then that was one of those things I stumbled across later. And it was one of my first stories I actually ever wrote. And I was really surprised by how specific it was and how much meaning there actually is in it. And then I re-recorded it and put it on SoundCloud. So it's a whole different thing, but I like the idea of maybe picture pieces, car accident, song, and an elephant all being like maybe roughly the same narrative, different parts in time. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on to Postmod Icon.
Oh my god.
Icon.
So I was criticized heavily every time I've ever shown this song because it's so postmodern, which is what it's called. That's why it's called Postmod Icon, is like postmodern icon, as in an embodiment of the postmodern mentality. I'm a big reader, and I write a lot, and I listen to a lot, and so I am frequently interested by. I used to be frequently interested in movements, like how art evolves into these new things, and where my place is in that, and carrying on that legacy. And I loved Thomas Pynchon. I still love him. The Crying of Lot 49 is one of my favorite books of all time. And because it's so short and it's so dense. And every time I read it, I see one more thing I didn't see before. It's really interesting. It's like, I don't know if you've seen I'm Thinking of Ending Things on Netflix, or at least in the US, it's on Netflix. And it's a Charlie Kaufman movie. He did like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and whatnot. And he's very introspective. And I fucking love that movie. Every time I watch it, I see something new. And with this song, I was like, how can I totally shatter songwriting as a concept and just do something totally sound but totally ridiculous to everybody else?
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be antagonistic. I was just trying to be honest to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time,
just I have to go to take the charger of the laptop. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Go for it.
1 minute.
Oh my god, this song. I wish I could have recorded it with a whole studio or whatever. Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm thinking about the song. I'm thinking about maybe I was being antagonistic. Maybe I was trying to cause problems. I don't know. This is one of those things where like the song actually existed way before it existed. So it was a concept I came up with like way before I ever did it. And the thing about it is that I actually showed it to my dad.
Oh,
and I was like, you should be more like cool with your music. You're so serious all the time. He's like, because like all of LP's stuff is like the darker the heart and all these demons I'm fighting, and I love it. It's theatrical, but it's not me, right? I'm very like, demons aren't non-describable to me. They're very articulate constructs, and there are things. I'm very articulate. I don't generalize. I specialize in things. So with him, I was like, you got to be more fun. Like you do have these moments where you're super fun and excited and totally whimsical and postmodern yourself, and you don't do it ever when you're like live, or like when you're in an interview, or when you're doing music. You really just need to like let go and just like just be who you are. He's like, I am being who I am. I was like, I'm not saying you're not being who you are. What I'm saying is like there's a more authentic version of that you could uncover. And I probably didn't say it nearly as eloquently when you know, we weren't good at being eloquent, but that was the intention. And I was like, yeah, for example, he's like, what would that look like? I was like, well, for example, I'm gonna write a song where I take all of the tweets that I tweeted for the last year and I put them in the song as lyrics, and then I just figure that out. And he was like, that's a fucking horrible idea. He's like, that's not a good idea. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I was like, do you know how funny I am? Do you know how weird I am on Twitter? Do you understand? Do you follow me? I don't like, you follow me, but do you pay attention? Because I say some weird shit. And I use Twitter as like a sounding board for like my thoughts. Like I was literally just like I was because when I first started using social media, I was very like apprehensive towards it. I thought if you want to be whimsical and you want to say what's on your mind, then just fucking say what's on your mind.
Mhm.
Don't go to social media to do it. Just tell the people around you because to me in my mind, maybe you're not saying it the way you need to, and so you're compromising with social media so you can.
Mhm.
And maybe you need to think about that, and maybe you need to recontextualize the people in around you and your relationship to them, because if you can't be honest with them, I don't know what you're doing. And so like my Instagram started with me taking pictures of my feet, just like with shoes on. Like anywhere I went, I just took a picture and I sent it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my god, I'm on Instagram, I'm so cool. I, you know, like just like being, I'm just being an asshole basically. And obviously that changed. Now my platform is very like authentic to who I am,
Yeah.
and it's a very different thing.
I noticed that you're spelling the alphabet letters using some images on your Instagram.
Yes, yes, yeah. That's a thing we could talk about too. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. And but now it's more of like a platform for my artistic expression and not so much of me trolling people.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for many years now. And so I've grown into it.
Mhm.
And Twitter was one of those places where I was like, I don't really see the point of Twitter. I'm an image based person in the first place, so Instagram is naturally more
Yeah.
beneficial for me.
Mhm.
And so on Twitter, I would just go and write just what was on my mind, and which is probably why I don't have. So I have a following, but nobody really engages. I have like 10,000 followers on Twitter,
Yeah.
and nobody engages with me really. I have like 3 people at a time, which is fine because I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
But with the things I was putting out, it was like random thoughts or experiences or whatever. And so my Twitter actually is more of a stream of consciousness, more of a reflection of my of evolution of consciousness
Mhm.
as I grow. And so I took the tweets from all those like probably a year or so. I think at the time I went back and I took every tweet I ever wrote and wrote it down. And then I sat down at the piano and I figured out some like random. I think actually that was the first time I recorded it and the last time I recorded it.
Mhm.
And it was just a matter of just like, well, I'm gonna off the cuff, let's go. And that's what ended up being on the album, but it wasn't intentional. Like I just by the time I got there, I was like, what point am I? When I got to the point of sequencing it in the EP, I was like, well, what am I trying to say? Because this isn't the album I was writing, and this isn't the EP I was writing. So what am I saying here? And I guess what came to my mind was I'm just saying what's on my mind. And so the song is literally just
Okay.
me repeating my ridiculousness.
um. Okay. Let's move on to Blip.
Blip,
Blip.
just a bleep, bloop, blop. I don't know. I think those were all names at one point. The idea was just like it was a cool guitar track, another transition piece. I just like this way it sounds, spaghetti western kind of. There's like a surfer rock vibe to it, um, and it's just me noodling. I had a bunch of stems, like a bunch of like basic song ideas, and then that was just one of those. I probably don't. I don't think I have anything to say on that. I think I just was like, well, that was on my mind at one point, and it was cool to me. And so, because the song preceding it was literally what was on my mind, I just
Mhm.
put what was on my mind.
That's what
Yeah.
matters.
There you go.
Uh.
That's what happens in my head. That's what inside my head sounds like all the time.
Okay.
So there you go. You literally are inside my head when you hear
Ah,
these little things.
okay. Scavenger, or it's like S.
Yeah, it's there's a yeah. I didn't spell it correctly because it's not
Okay.
the full rendition of the song. It's just the chorus of the song.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of those things where there are three iterations of the song on the album, and they seem to be a through line because ultimately, in my opinion, what I was getting at was
Okay.
that song. The ultimate point of any of those songs was that song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way that it talks about, and I know I'm talking about Scavenger Song as well, Scavenger Hunt, because they're all the same song.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a matter of finding what I was trying to articulate, how I wanted to do it. There's a slight variation in the way it's played,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a different kind of performance there. So with that, it's just another iteration of something that was forming. And I thought too at the time, like how interesting it would be to have to go through the process of writing a song
Mm-hmm.
because we don't see that a lot with artists. It's like we see the finished product. I've
Mm-hmm.
met plenty of people who are like, I won't let you read, listen to, watch anything that's not done. And it's like, okay, but isn't your art like a evolution, like a
Word.
moment by moment evolution of who you are? So why are you so guarded with it? You can't be that guarded with who you are. In my opinion, I'm not guarded with who I am at all. I'm very much like, this is what I am, this is what I do, this is what I'm thinking right now. I might change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm very interactive with that exploration and that evolution. And which is why a lot of these songs are like, well, that was in my head at the time, so now it's there. Because yeah, this whole thing is reactive. It's a whole like, well, this is my thought process over 3 years almost. So that was a really interesting concept to me. It's like how would it sound if I were to listen to someone write a song? And so in Welcome we hear the whole thing played out, just instrumental. Now we hear the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
Next we'll hear the whole thing finished. And it kind of actually did happen that way because I wanted to get the chorus down before I got anything else down, and so that's what I did. Um,
And you put
but
in
yeah,
between the two, she is the whole.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds very.
No. It's right. It's correct. I'm laughing because I was being antagonistic with this song.
Mhm.
I suddenly remembered where that came from, and it came from a friend of mine. My description of it, my description of a friend of mine
Okay.
because this friend was always their own problem. They were the biggest obstacle in their life all the time. I was by their side every day, problem solving every day. We all know people like that. We're like, how can you not get over this? Like, I'm being patient, but it's been like 3, 4 years now. Like, come on, man. Um, but also there's a matter of like self exploration. So for me, it was like it took a while for me to get to the point of being like, you are the hole. You keep talking about falling into these fucking holes. You are the thing
So.
that's causing these problems. You
Mhm.
are the thing that could solve the problems,
Mhm.
which is something I believe in. It's like a lot of the things that we all get caught up by are some things that we fabricate ourselves or we take on from other people that we could just
Yeah.
shake. We
Yeah.
could just shake, right? We don't know we can shake it, but once we know, it's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's liberating.
Mhm. And
It could be very painful,
it is, and we should
but it's
also,
liberating.
we should
Sorry, what were you saying?
look at the big picture of our life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
moments in time. I mean, we're not made out of a tragedy. We're not made out of a relationship
No, we are not the
or
things that these
much
things
more.
that we are constantly shackled by, held down by, are things that ultimately don't define us, and we actually control whether they do or not. And from in my experience, and this is something I practice, is like if I react a certain way, then I need to critically analyze why that made me feel that way. Because I'm big on meditation. I meditate all the time. I meditate like every day, probably 40 minutes to an hour a day. I'm very, very engaged with that lifestyle. I spend at least 2, 3 hours of my day in mindful breathing, mindful meditation, all these things. And so I'm very much in the belief that like we are what we make ourselves, and even though it's hard to shake things, shake it, because you can't even be yourself until you're free of these things. And that's the thing, is that my friend was going through an identity crisis all the time,
Yeah.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with growing, absolutely not. It's the way you go about it, if you're being intentional about it or not. And then if you're being intentional about it, or unintentional, figuring out like why that's happening to you. Because this song talks a lot about social media presence. It talks a lot about the feeling of being abandoned or left behind, of things being against your will, of like, I never asked you to do this. I never wanted to be left behind. I never, I watch you guys having your own life from a distance. And these are all things that we would talk about frequently, of like, yeah, okay, but that's that person's life though. And if they don't want you in it, then maybe, as much as it sucks, you need to disengage from that and re-engage in what you want and what you want for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
with people
we had long discussions about that.
with people that truly value your presence in their life,
Right.
not wasting it with.
Well, they have to be intentional about it, right? It's like, if you're in my life because you love me and you want to see me grow and you want to see my progress as a person, then facilitate that progress. Be engaged because you want to, not because you have to, and love because you want to love. And that's it. No expectation on it. Just let me do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you need people like that. Everybody needs people like that. That's the way it should be. And I do believe that there are ways things should be and ways things should not be. I think that there are definitive stances on those things, and that's one of those things I'm definitive on. Is you should be surrounded by people who put you up. And not on a pedestal, but realistically, like, they support you because they support you, not because they want something out of it, not because they want something, not because they're bored, I struggle with that a lot too. I'm sure everybody has, where you have friends that are just like there because they have nothing better to do. Those aren't real friends,
Well,
unless the intention is to be in the life of the person because they want to be, and there's no expectation on it. That can sound the same and look the same, but they're not the same thing.
yes.
Yeah. And this song was written literally about that, because, and this actually used to be in a collaboration with one of my friends who, her name's Leah Capelli. She is an artist. You can actually find her music. She's the real deal. I think her stage name is La Freak, which is like L dash or apostrophe FREAQ, and it's kind of like an LGBTQ kind of identification. I didn't really talk to her too much about that, but and maybe I shouldn't even speak on it at all, but because that's her thing, but or their thing. I'm not really sure what the pronouns are or how she feels about that.
Yeah.
But so I won't speak too much about Leah, but originally this was going to be a song that we were going to collaborate on, and the intention behind it was to put these things out as blatantly as possible. And use it as a catalytic thing for people to go, oh yeah, that is true, and then to talk about it, because I think everybody feels that. At one point in life, everybody feels left behind, everybody feels abandoned, everybody feels like, by watching social media, somebody's going off and doing something cooler. But where you are now is just fine. And if it's not, you can. What is it?
It's exactly where you need to be.
It's where you need to be, and if it's not, then you'll realize that, and you'll then be where you need to be, because you need to be there to know that you shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a catch-22. But the whole point of the song is to really confront modern issues of identity in a world that is connected through disconnection, and it's not, again, these are all like demos, so this isn't even the finished product. There was more to it. I just felt like if I wasn't going to be in a studio doing that work, then this was a good way to stop the song and start the song. And I think it's really important. It's one of my favorite ones. I think Car Accident's like the best musically, but I think this song is also very. It's I think it's probably more perfect in the sense that it's accurate and true to the actual experience, and it doesn't mince words very much.
Mm.
I sing with a lot of force on that one because I was angry when I sang it. And I think you can tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
It feels chaotic to me. It has a chaotic energy.
Well,
But yeah.
like you said, feelings are exactly what we decide them to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, after that, I was like, I don't need this. And I actually, and that was actually one of the first friends I did say, like, I've done everything I can, and
But it was good for
I
the music experience. I mean, you got
yeah.
out of
I got so much out of it, and I'm happy that I could have been there for you. And but I need to, in order for me to be healthy, I need to keep going my direction,
yeah.
and you clearly need to go yours. And I'll always be here when you're ready to come back.
Mhm.
So I'll be back, or you can come back whenever you're ready. And it hasn't happened yet, but it's fine. It doesn't matter.
It's good
Um,
to have friends like you, Jamie.
yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah, well, heartbreaks are always my inspiration for my songs as well. If I
Yeah.
get something about relationships, it's like I got a new song out of this, and that's good.
I know, right? It's like, don't take Taylor Swift because she'll write a song about you.
Yeah, or
But also, my relationship changed to the idea of heartbreak because I don't really feel heartbreak anymore,
mhm.
ever. No matter what happens.
Okay.
I've gone through a lot of family stuff, a lot of friend stuff, a lot of significant other stuff with my partner, obviously, because that's what happens when you're in a relationship. There are things that just don't go the way you want them to, or maybe you don't realize there's something that needs to change in you,
Mhm.
and it used to be painful, but now I'm like, oh great, well I didn't know. Let's work on that. So um, I used to be like, I'll just write the saddest songs and I'll just relate to everybody. And now I'm like, well, is that constructive? Is that truly? Am I really processing these things? Not to like comment on your songwriting at all. I have no idea what that entails. But from in my experience, for me, it's like I actually wrote a lot of this in a very bitter state, like the entire EP, 3 years of just like grieving and figuring myself out and whatever. So yeah, I'm surprised I didn't write more sad songs.
Well,
This is the saddest song on the album.
on Scavenger Hunt, lyrically, I was thinking if I'd have a first date with somebody and I'd ask all the questions that you put them there, how would that?
Yeah, yeah, certainly in a more localized frame of reference, that song can absolutely be there in that way.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I didn't even think of it as like a one-on-one relationship. Like Picture Pieces is
Mhm.
definitely right, but for me, Scavenger Hunt was one of those things where I was like, how do you put massively complex situations into songs in a way that is not convoluted, very specific,
Mhm.
but also allows the audience to kind of make their own connection. And I have always been perplexed by cosmic things. I have a very deep connection with what I would call the spiritual side of things. And since I was a child, like I said, premonitions, empathy, what I call impressions, which are not the same thing as premonitions. Um, I've just had a lot of wacky supernatural experiences, a lot. I've literally seen ghosts, apparitions. I've literally been to other places that don't exist, physically been there, and with other people, so I wasn't the only one. Um, that's a whole different story. But the thing for me, and starting when my father passed, I realized in a weird way, as all people do when their parents die, that it's actually very necessary for the self to lose a parent or both, because they're what you model yourself after. And once that foundation is gone and you're not seeing it in the world in the way that you used to, and you're not engaging with it in the way that you used to, your mind starts to wander to different things. And I feel that it's a natural part of life to have that loss and to find yourself in that loss. So for me, this song was like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And how do I express my experience with that side of things, that spiritual side of things, in a way that isn't new agey or hippie, or because I don't have a label for myself of like what I am and what I'm doing. So I wouldn't want to be associated with those things. I'd want to be taken at face value for the things I'm doing and the things I talk about. And for me, this song was that. And that was the whole point of writing music in the first place. I think once I wrote that song, I went, I don't really have to write another song again. I don't really have to do it, because I wrote a song about the process of exploration in that sense. And yeah, I mean, literally, there's talk about spaceships and galaxies and things like that, traveling space. And there is like a literal technological exploration of space, which is, you know, like a scholarly pursuit for me, because I'm very much a scholarly person. I engage with things like I'm playing Mortal Kombat right now. I don't know if you play video games, but I started playing Mortal Kombat, which is like a one-on-one fighter game that used to be an arcade game, but now, you know, with the modern generations, it's a bit more than that. And the whole process is through the whole part of the game that is really important is that hand-eye coordination and being able to plan in the moment, like what you're going to do. And so, and this is the way I work with everything. I don't jump into things and just fake it till I make it. I break it down into little pieces, and then I digest those pieces until I've mastered them and move forward. So, you know, with Mortal Kombat, I'll do every single tutorial perfectly. And then I will go, if I'm having problems with a certain part of the combat, I will go and only fight matches with defensive, offensive moves. Like, I'll only block, I'll only do things and defeat them that way. And then I'll scale difficulty so that I can get better and better at it, more reactive and more introspective on it. And that's the way I work. So when I was writing this song, the technological component of it was very important to me, because I do look at things very objectively. And then the other part of it was using that spiritual connection, that intelligence that connects you to something higher, like a premonition, or lower. I guess there's no up or down, really. It's just all part of the same existence. There's no level to it. It's just an aspect of something that plugs me into that aspect, using that part of my cognitive process to ask the important questions. And that's why the song is mostly questions. So I'm traveling through a spaceship asking questions, which I think is literally just what humanity does. And so through that, I'm also figuring out what it means to be human, right? And the song is, I'm trying to think of the chorus, because the reason I wanted to get the chorus down the way I did is because that's the punchline, right? The very end of the song is, I've already known you. I knew you the whole time. Whatever I was looking for, whoever I was talking to, I already knew that. And that's something I've come to. And this is one of those things where, like, with like an elephant, which I'm glad you brought that up, because it does pertain to the message of some of these songs, is like, I already knew what I was talking about. I just didn't know what I was talking about. So I intuitively knew what was going on. I articulated it. And at the time, I just didn't have the skill set to truly understand it. And looking back, I go, oh, it's so clear. It's so clear. And this is one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, oh, yes. Because one of my meditation mantras is inward, then outward. Because we frequently, at least in the US, we live outward to inward. And then we get confused where the disconnection happens. But the answer is, you know, we are all connected to everything that has ever existed. So the more we meditate and the more we build that connection, the more we facilitate that breath work, and we do all these things, the more connected we become, because we have to be able to stand on our own feet.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you know, like at the end of the day, I am going to be here. my significant other may die before me. My career may tank and may go a whole different direction. All these things could happen. I could, it snowed here recently. I could go to the store and somebody could run a stoplight and I could get in an accident. Ultimately, I have myself to answer to, and I'm responsible only for myself. And once you dive into that, you start to realize that you know a lot of things you shouldn't know. Mm. You haven't been taught these things. You haven't gone to school for these things. So how do you know these things? You ask a question in meditation, and all of a sudden you're like, boop, 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 boop. I have an answer. And you're like, wait, I just answered a physics question I don't know the math for, that I don't even know the concept of. And now I'm Googling it to see whether or not that's possible, whether people have caught on to this. And you're like, holy shit, I did. I totally nailed it, And these conversations are really important. And I find that the more we look into something, the more we also forget to take a second to look back. Mm-hmm. And I think, I got dog hair all over me. I think, you find that the simplest answers to the most complex questions are always right in front of your face. Mm-hmm. You're just so busy. Like you look at this and you're like, oh, it's a hand. Yeah. What is a hand? And you're like, oh, well, there are all these muscles and there are all these fingers and blah, 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 blah. What's that?
We like to complicate things when there's so...
Yes. We get in our own way. And you go, well, what is a hand for? And then you're like, well, I don't know, because what does this one muscle do, and what's this bone do, and what's it? You're not answering the question you asked. Mm-hmm. I already know what a hand is for. I don't need to know what a hand is for.
We get
no question. You get caught up in the minutia of it. You don't realize, like, oh, if I stop and I look, I realize that it's always been there. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know what to look for. I didn't know how to interpret it. Yeah. And that's the beauty of meditation for me. And I wasn't, this is 3 years ago I wrote this. This is when I really started trying to meditate. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even know this is something mm-hmm. that I hadn't yet learned. So, it's like, again, I already knew the answer. I wrote a song about it, but I didn't know what I was really looking at. I didn't understand the gravity of what I was saying. Yeah. Now I know exactly what I meant. But yeah, so that's why I was like, well, if I wrote that song, I don't need to write any other song, because every other song is asking the same questions, mm-hmm. telling of the same experiences. But I already wrote a song that's 2.5 minutes that encompassed all of that, sufficiently enough for me to be satisfied. Yeah.
Reflections, the interlude is up next.
Reflections. Trying to remember what that one is. It's another transition piece. Maybe also guitar. Was Blip guitar, or was I thinking of Reflections?
I play, but I don't think it's good for YouTube.
Oh man, that's so crazy. I don't remember. Here, I'll listen to it real quick. How about that? I don't know my own music. Let's see. Fine. Oh, yeah, no. It's all I heard was silence, and I know exactly what it is. That was something I wrote way before I even considered, at like years before I think I was in high school. Mm-hmm. It was like over 8 years ago now. And it was a stem I found. And I thought, at the time, I was just like more into piano and less into guitar. And I thought, wow, that's, I don't sound like I just started, but I did just start pretty much. And that's actually, the thing that's coming to me now is that when I sequenced it in the album, I just thought, well, this is a cool transition piece. But now that I'm looking back on it, and, taking a second to see what I already knew, what I was doing was improvising a piece that I wanted to turn into a song. I don't remember the content of the song, but I was writing it on a guitar that I don't use anymore. It's a guitar that I just don't have anymore. It was my legend has it, and I don't know how true this is, but because parents want to make you feel special sometimes. So who knows? But legend has it that was my dad's first guitar,
Okay.
and it was all broken up. So I kind of like nursed it back to health a little bit, and the thing that holds the strings in place is called a nut.
Yeah.
And I had to like glue it back on, like that kind of stuff. Or like I'm just like it's just not even. It's just an antique.
Yeah. Oh.
And I mean from the 90s, easily. I mean probably early 90s, and I was playing that in like 2012. So it's like not really well taken care of. It's aged significantly more than it probably should have. It's already had like sunspots and stuff, or sun like defects from like being out in the elements. And I remember feeling like, oh wow, because a lot of people don't. I don't think I've mentioned this because it's never come up, but this is actually really important. Is my high school, where I went to high school, was an old club where my dad played his first shows, along with Nirvana. So I ended up playing my first performances and learning my musical education in the same place where he found his musical identity, which is really interesting, So there actually kind of is like a rabbit hole there in that reflections when you reflect on it, and it's really cool. I think of all of the interconnections, the meaningful coincidences, the happenings that went on there, because it was a club and then it got turned into a charter school. And
was it Electric Ballroom?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And ironically, maybe not so ironic, I actually had Electric Ballroom footage in my Soul Song video, um, which is full circle too. But yeah, it's very interesting to like think about, like, you're asking me what it is. I don't know. I guess it's like it's one of those things where it's like a Jungian thing where you're like, well, it has meaning because of all the meanings that surround it, not because it is itself meaningful. In a lot of ways, it's like the subconscious of that instrument kind of brought everything together. So yeah, I said it, the subconscious of the instrument, because these thoughts and these feelings that we all have, and these ideas that exist in songs are all alive. They're not things that are just made up. They live and they breed and they interact and they move, and it's important to remember that. So maybe that's a subconscious, like, subliminal nod towards that. I don't know. Maybe. I was reflecting. Okay.
Yeah. And the last one is EP demo. Like,
that. That one is the only real song I finished for the demo, or for the EP that I was going to write. So I kind of took elements of what the EP was going to be and the album that I was writing, that a lot of these songs came off of, and that was the only song that I actually finished and wrote completely. And it came from a whole different set of influences. This is not an Arctic Monkey song. It's not a David Bowie song. It's not a Pink Floyd song. It's not any of those. It's a Willow song. It's a Jaden song. It's a Caliucci song. It's a like it's more based off the more modern influences, because I wrote that after I met my partner, and I had to go through a lot of change. Like, sometimes you just meet somebody and you both give each other things that you didn't like, that you could give, that nobody else could give. And that was one of those things where I finally got to writing the EP. I had it all mapped out and everything, and I sat down one day and I was like, I'm gonna write this song. And the actual title is not EP demo, it's Abandonment.
Okay.
which is I have a track list of like 12 songs that's supposed to be a part of,
Mm-hmm.
detailing my entire growth from birth to now, which is I'm coming up on my 25th birthday this year. So that's my first quarter of my life. That's
Yeah.
going to be complete. And I knew that last year, which is when I wrote that song. It's actually the newest of all of those. And I felt then like, oh, okay, well, I know now how to handle the structure of the EP. I know what to do. I'm emotionally literate enough to tackle these things and not let them consume me again and all over again. And so I started from the very beginning of my life. And at the time, Willow, I don't know if you're familiar with Willow Smith,
Yeah.
but she's fucking phenomenal. And she's like, in a weird way, she kind of is one of my top role models in
Okay.
terms of being an artist and being independent and all those things. I follow her not religiously, but I do follow everything. I follow her and Jaden um, very closely because I'm very, very interested in both of them
Mm-hmm.
um, as expressive human beings, and they they're so fascinating to me because they tread the line. Well, actually, I would say that Jaden treads the line more efficiently, where Willow's just kind of more on one side than the other. She's in her own world, and Jaden straddles the world that we all have to interact with on a daily basis and his own personal growth in his world. Or that's my interpretation of it. And her EP really hit me in a certain way. Um, in my mind, the self-titled Willow EP is like it's a master work. Like it's short, but everything is incredibly intentional. Everything is incredibly well orchestrated and developed. It's beautiful, and it moved me in a lot of ways emotionally that I wasn't prepared for. And I was also listening to like Joji and like a little bit and Rex Orange County and some more of these like Claro, Clario, whatever.
I know.
My partner calls her Clario, so I always say Clario, and I caught myself that time, and I was like, I don't know if that's her name. But all these artists are very frank with their emotional
Mm-hmm.
growth and situations, and that's my whole platform. That's
Yeah.
what my platform evolved into is addressing mental health in a very serious and direct way. Um, and that includes Willow and Rex and all these people. And so I was in a different world harmonically, in a different world thematically, and I kind of left the showboating to the side, where I was like, well, I'm this character that's like a lounge singer on the moon, to like, no, I'm talking about like real serious things, like being honest about my experience, which is something that historically people have had a problem with. I've had to defend myself many, many times for being honest
Yeah.
about what my life is like, and mostly because of my dad's involvement. Because people don't like deconstructing their heroes that way, but the fact of the matter is that it is a front. Lincoln Park is an image, and it was his best self, but it wasn't his whole self. And when he came home, we didn't really always get that really cool guy who does backflips on stage or whatever. And he dealt with a lot of stuff that we never talked about. And I've talked about this before, but like my whole thing is like talk about it, and that's what I based all of my work on, musically and otherwise. My films. I mean, when you guys see a chant, you'll understand why I did it in the first place, and it is based off my personal experience. And I am undiagnosed BPD, so borderline personality disorder. So my traumatic experiences have kind of defined the world that I've grown up in and my interaction with it. And the writing of the demo is like, okay, now it's time to be honest with myself and with everybody else, because and it started out kind of as like I'm going to make one definitive work about my life, and the rest of you can shut the fuck up about it, because this is my life. Like, like don't be mad because I'm telling my story and there's no one here to defend themselves. That's kind of a weird argument. And so I started writing this stuff, and really only finished one before I realized how futile that was, because ultimately I'm responsible for myself, and ultimately I'm the one who holds myself up. So I don't really need to explain anything to anybody. And that's not to say it won't ever come out, or I won't ever write stories about it, or I won't ever put it into my art, because I do, obviously, with the song. But it'll happen whenever I feel like getting to it. And it's also, like I said earlier with the chant, like I'm past that. I don't need to dig those things up and pretend I care about them, so that other people can feel validated in their feelings about their God being dethroned. That's not interesting to me. So basically, I wrote a song that is a true to life depiction. And actually, I will look up the lyrics to this because I don't want to mince words. So let's see. I put them on. I have never looked at the. Oh, they did put my lyrics on here. So nice. Oh, there's some lyrics I didn't put in there. Is a lyric. That sound. But yeah, so I guess I could just run through the lyrics real quick, because I grew up in a family full of addicts. Really, my mom didn't even know she was pregnant with me, so she was using, and she was smoking, and all these things. And my stepdad was an alcoholic, and my dad was an alcoholic, and my stepmom has substance things, and a little bit of dependency all over the place. And so the song was literally from birth, right? The first refrain, I guess, is "born a maybe from liquid bleeding cavity," and the idea was just to like anchor people in that very visceral moment of birth, right? It's painful, it's gory, and it fucks with your body, and it's also beautiful. And like
I mean, I don't know yet.
it's a very visceral thing in general to be physically inside another person. And my big influences in emotional literacy are like Dr. Nadine Burke Harris with her book The Deepest Well: Overcoming long-term childhood adversity. Toxic stress is what she brings up there. And like I said, Jungian, the entire time I'm reading the Red Book, and I'm discovering these things and exploring these elements of life. And what I found is that you do, or The Origin of Life by Nick Lane, which is pre-RNA life, and how things are passed down genetically, even emotions, and how these things affect people from the moment you're born. Your parents, if they're stressed out, can give you that emotional energy, and it can impact you. And then if you're born into the environment, of course, that stimulated that response in your parents, then you're doubly inflicted. And then you grow up and those things evolve, and you suddenly don't know how to deal with anything. Your body is confused as to what normal is, and it rejects you, and it creates a lot of problems. And this is science. This isn't just like new age philosophical talk. Ventilator baby in the back seat, quick name wrong on the receipt. So I was a drug baby. I came out and I was premature, and they had to put me on a ventilator. I almost didn't make it. So, and I was driven home eventually. And I used to ask, like, why is my name Jamie? Because my brother's name is Isaiah. And so my mom would be like, well, Isaiah's from the Bible. And I'm like, oh, cool. So, like, what's my name? I don't know. You haven't really. She's like, I don't know. It sounded good. I'm like, oh, okay. And I actually had a problem as a child because my legal, because I didn't meet my dad till I was 8. My legal last name was my mom's maiden name, and my first name was spelled wrong because my mom spelled my name wrong on the birth certificate, and then she had to get it changed later. She didn't realize she did it, and then so my name. Well, actually, no, she did. She meant originally she spelled my name Jayme because she wanted my nickname to be Jay, and then which is like ridiculous because if my name's Jamie, you could just call me Jay anyways. Just it could be a letter, it doesn't matter. But she actually meant to spell it differently, and ironically, it's Jaime. That's actually how my name is spelled. It's spelled in the Mexican name Jaime. It's Jaime, which I'm not as far as I know, and my family isn't. They're very white. Um, so that's like a literal depiction of where I came from. So there's an identity crisis for you. Um, I'll wait for you in the house with the slanted floors to the ceiling while it talks to you from the bulb in the preschool bathroom. I used to go to tutor time, which is like a daycare, and I would be there after hours all the time for so long. And it wasn't until recently that I found out my mom was using with one of the administrators. And that's why I would be there for so long, is because they would be getting high in the bathroom. That person taught her how to smoke out of a light bulb. And so that was really fucked up. And I realized that. And the slanted floors, there was a playhouse. It was a house and it had a floor like this. I don't know why. It was the most bizarre thing. But it had a floor like this and you could go up in the rooms and stuff. And I used to have panic attacks in that room. And I didn't realize until I was 22 or 23 that I had suffered chronic panic attacks and anxiety all my life. I thought it was depression. But then I met somebody with BPD and I was like, oh, you sound just like me. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I told them my story. And then they were like, yeah, you probably have it. And then we researched it first with this person and then second with myself. And then I realized one of my other friends, one of my close friends has BPD as well. And most likely the people like in my immediate circle do as well. And it was one of those things where like I went on the internet and I like searched it up and I was like, holy shit. This is like an article written about me. Like it's like somebody's talking about me. And it was very strange. It was super surreal because I was like, oh my God, like I could have known this my entire life and I had no clue. And so one of my struggles is using meditation to overcome it. And so I realized that that I had been suffering this as a child, right? So when I was in that slanted house, I suffered many, many panic attacks alone because I was the only kid there. And then the promise me love, promise me as I sleep line. Parents do that. They're like, I love you, but there's a bit of hypocrisy in it because there is, because if you did, you wouldn't be using. If you did, I wouldn't be living in Glendale in a, violent neighborhood. If I did, there are so many things that happened that wouldn't happen if you really loved somebody. And it was something I had to deal with coming out of that situation, understanding what love really is. Because for me, love was always backhanded. It was, I love you, so love me. I got clean so you could be happy, instead of I got clean because I want to be happy. And then the expectation on it, of course, is that, these things have a long lasting effect. And one of the problems with BPD is that you don't know what's authentic and what's not. And that causes a conflict within you because you don't know how to handle it at all. And it took me forever to realize, especially with my partner, that this person's loving me and being around me because they want to, not because they want anything from me. And they said it for so long. It literally took me about a year of a committed relationship to finally go, okay. Probably actually a year and 3 months, if I'm being honest. But I didn't want to be here, so you're just going to leave me here. And that's the refrain for the rest of the song. And that specifically references, obviously, like abandonment, but specifically when I was very young, around 8 years old, my mom decided she was going to get clean and she dropped me off at my grandma's house and then she didn't come back for like 3 years, something like that. And I ended up going to live with my aunt, my uncle, and doing all these things. So, and that was dramatic, and there was just a lot behind it. And so the whole refrain is just on repeat, just like, why I didn't ask to be here. Why are you leaving me here? And that's pretty much the state I was in until. Well, I wonder if there is a definitive stopping point, if it was gradual. I think probably when I met my partner, because then I realized, because when I met my partner, I was already doing things for me. I was here making my movie. Actually, I made my movie here in Sedona, and then I never left. So I've been here since then.
So you're living it
Um,
now.
which is like a year and a half or more, just a little more, probably like a year, 7 months. And I grew up here, so not in the northern, but the southern part of the state. And when I met uh, them, I was like, "Hey, like fuck all the other noise." I started to realize, because the hardest thing about knowing that you're in a bad situation is finding somebody who will share that understanding and not take advantage of it and do what's right for you. And I never had that ever. So not even with my family. I've fallen out with all my family. I do not talk to my family, especially with the election. All this stuff, like trying to explain to them why it's morally wrong to discriminate against minorities and promote, a military coup and all of these numerous things. It just goes on. I don't need to explain it. Anybody who's watching this and is from the U.S. will know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about, and they don't want to hear it anymore, and I don't want to hear it anymore. But yeah, I mean, when you get to the point where I'm at in my mindfulness and my practice, it's one or the other. You got to pick. You don't get to straddle those lines because it's poisonous, right?
Yeah.
And I think I posted something about it on my Instagram, right? Everybody's like, "Oh my God, you don't want to do blah 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 blah. Like, how dare you? Like, you don't trust Republicans? Like, that's so discriminatory in your own right." I'm like, dude, come on. I was like, they're like, wouldn't you want to have this like conversations? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I obviously am saying this because I've had enough conversation with the people I'm trying to
Yeah.
identify with. Um, so yeah, no, I am sorry, mom. I am sorry, grandma. I am sorry, cousin. I am sorry, all these people. But I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I believe in doing what's right at all times, no matter what, and I don't care if your feelings are hurt by somebody doing the right thing. Like that's not my problem. And so the song, when I wrote it, I finished it. I was like, oh wait, I don't. It was like Scavenger Hunt. Like when I wrote it, I was like, I don't need to write another song again. Well, I wrote another song, and I wrote a couple of songs. And when I wrote this one, I was like, I don't think I need to write another
Yeah.
album on this. I think that's pretty clear for me, at least. In any case, I would be doing it for me, and maybe for anybody else who relates if they listened that far. and and yeah, so that's a real life experience from probably ages 1 to 8. But I also don't remember most of that, so that's the reason it's so sparse and details, because I don't remember actually most of my life from 13. Actually, I would say from like uh, 23 and earlier. I don't have much recollection of how things happened, except for when it really matters. I do have memory of those things, so if anybody's watching and wants to call me out, you can shut your fucking mouth. But yeah, that's it. There
Your
you
life,
go.
your life is your life. Your experience is your experience. So no one should comment on that. I mean,
Right?
yeah,
If you're gonna do it, be loving and caring. Come on,
exactly. What's the
let's
point?
let's all be one. What's the
What's
problem with that?
the point in spreading more hate in this world? There's so much.
Yeah,
Really. I mean,
the only reason you do it is because either you're bored and you want something to do,
oh,
or you're petty and you want something to do, or you want to spread hate. And if that's the case, if any of those are the case, one, I don't have time, and two, I'm not spreading hate. I'm
hmm,
not doing it, and I'm not going to lie. So
that's
there you go.
yeah. Jamie, I wanted to wrap this up by asking you 3 questions. Hang on, I'm gonna take the phone
Okay.
because I
Yep.
don't want to spoil this and break it again. So I want you to answer three questions that are
Okay.
either album names or song titles.
Okay.
The first one is "What Is Love" by Hathaway. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Are you? Is the question what is love?
Yeah, what is love?
Oh boy. Oh hey, look, I'm sweating. I have the window open. It's freezing, and I'm just like hypothermic right now. But it's so
Oh,
nice to feel those things sometimes. What is love? I'm gonna give you a real answer. Just give me a second, cause
yeah, take your time.
yeah, I'm gonna think about it. It's a great song. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is, but that's not my answer.
It's like an
Love
anthem.
is unconditional, I think.
Mhm.
Um, that's one of the things I've practiced is loving someone to love them only because I love them and I want to see them uh, grow. My three like pillars of interaction are or intention for myself is to love, to heal, and to grow. And I live every second by those, no matter how hard it is.
Mhm.
Um, whether I want to have that conversation with somebody or not, or whether I want to do that thing with somebody or not, or whether or not I want to take the time out of my day to do something that I totally wasn't planning. Because, when you love somebody, when you love anything, which you should love everything, um, you, it's not an inconvenience ever to take that time.
Mhm.
Um, it's also not an inconvenience to express it. And if you're with somebody in any capacity because you love them, it's because you want to see them grow. You want them to have you know they have potential and you want to help them on their way.
Mhm.
And so their journey is not restricted to you and what your timeline is. So you have to be very intentional about that love and put it where it belongs every single time without fail.
Okay.
And it is unconditional and it is understanding
Mhm.
and it is patient because again the expectation isn't I'm loving you to get that love back. I'm loving you because I do and I find value in you because you are valuable. uh, and that's just the rule I live by. um,
Yeah.
it's a pain in the ass, trust me, but it can be, but it gets easier every time you act on that intention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second one is an album title. Where do we go when we fall asleep? By Billie Eilish.
Ooh. Yeah, I love Billy. Billy's so cool.
Me too.
Sometimes I'm like, is she that cool? Because
She's
I love Billy. I think if you asked any of my siblings or any of my friends or any of my, well, I guess that's it. My siblings, my family, or my friends. Which my siblings are my family, so my family are my friends. If you ask anybody who knows me,
okay.
uh, you just got to watch me think. If you asked anybody who knows me, I would gush endlessly about Billie Eilish,
Okay.
and I would not be ashamed of it. I don't care if she's much younger than me. I don't care. I love Billie. She's great.
Age is just
They're great. I don't know. Age is just a number, and the thing is like if you have that depth at that age,
that's what scares me sometimes.
how could you not love it? Like, come on.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on. How can you not love it? How can you listen to any of her music and go, oh my God, you're so stupid? Like, I don't know. At first, I heard Bad Guy and I was really annoyed because I don't like music on the radio. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then I listened to the album and I was like, why have I never listened to this before?
Yeah.
And then, I've heard her stuff she got discovered for. And I was like, this isn't bad either. Um, and the new singles are just so interesting. They're so real, and it's great. But sometimes I get caught up on the fact of whether or not I actually like Billie Eilish, or if I'm just like in love with the idea of Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
So it's a good question to ask yourself. That's never a bad question to ask yourself. Um,
Hmm.
but Billy's great.
Yeah.
Um,
And her brother
that,
as well.
oh, dude, Phineas is like he's an unsung hero. I don't know why. See, and this is a thing. Is like Billy's so cool that people forget to talk about Phineas. Phineas is fucking awesome, and he is a genius, just like she is.
Indeed.
And I can't really think of a better duo in that sense because they work as one, not as two. Whereas like Miles Kane and Alex Turner, they're two different people giving their experiences to one album. This is not the case. This is a unified, singular organism. And it's beautiful. And Phineas is just so cool, dude. Just like if anybody's listening, fuck Billy for a second. Just get away from her. Go watch Phineas. Go see his interviews. You know, it's just cool.
So
I
where
should say the same thing. So, if you don't trust my word, trust hers. But anyways, the phrasing I always get wrong. But could you say it again? What the name of the album is? Because I always mess it up.
where do we go when we fall asleep?
Where do we go when we fall asleep? Um, mhm. We don't go anywhere. That's a thing that I've come to an understanding of. Is that
Physically, we don't go anywhere.
no, not even mentally. You're always connected. Whatever's going on, whether it's a self process of realization or processing of emotion
Hmm.
or experience, or it's a spiritual connection to a premonition or an impression or a physical transmigration to another plane of existence. It doesn't matter. Um, the disconnect that we all suffer from is the idea of disconnection. Our ideas have enslaved us. We're not like I came to the conclusion the other day. I was driving on the Navajo reservation, Hopi to Navajo,
Uh-huh.
um, and it occurred to me like, why do people say that we're in three dimensions? Why do they say that we're three dimensional plus a dimension of time? Because that's just being ridiculous. We're four dimensional creatures. We experience time. We have three spatial dimensions. But the thing that's really odd is like time is a fucking poison. It's really poisonous because if you really like critically think about it, time isn't anything. Time is a consequence, just like we are. We are a consequence of matter. We're an evolution of a eukaryote cell up to this point, and who knows why it's specifically us? It may not even be intentional. We probably have literally been made to be humans on accident. I know that's hard to like digest, but like if you really think about time, time is a consequence. Time is a consequence of mass. Mass in it's called space time. It's not called time. Space time, as in the field of space has an impression on it that creates gravity. There's a reason they can't find a fucking graviton is because gravitons don't exist. And so when you think about it like that, you go, well, then what is time? Time's just a consequence. Then what are three spatial dimensions? You realize like thinking critically like that is so important. And like that is what nature is. Nature is a consequence. Nature, our connection to the natural world is a connection to the spiritual world. You're built, you have the hardware. You have an organ right here that tells you, hey, look at this, see things differently. And it doesn't work anymore. Why? Why do we grow old? Why? Why do monks sit up in the Himalayas? Why do they not age? It's because time doesn't fucking exist. Your relationship to time is what kills you. Alcohol doesn't kill you. It's your relationship to it. If you're drinking and driving, that will kill you. If you're constantly breaking your day into 1,200 parts and you never have time to think, then you're easily subjugated. And this isn't like a propaganda speech of like, oh my God, like you're a prisoner of the government or whatever, because it's not really that. The U.S. government didn't invent time. It all came from a good place of managing things and being productive, but it became overrun. So when you really think about it, time isn't anything.
Yeah, it's just
It's
no.
not.
It's
Well,
just,
if time is something, then how come your soul doesn't age like your body?
yeah.
Just think about that shit. You put that in your head digest it. Um, and so when we go to sleep, we're just giving ourselves up to the freedom of a construct less reality. You go to sleep, you're not worried about your finances. You're not worried about your time management. You're not worried about these things, except for you are, right? Every time.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't even use the word time anymore. I don't even use the word sleep. Um, I I do use the actual word, but my definition for it is different than what most people would define those things as, because my relationship to them has changed. And the connection we all seek is already there. You're literally built with the hardware. So when you go to sleep, you don't go anywhere. You stay here. And actually, if you wanted to be somewhere else, if you wanted to be spiritually engaged in other things, if you wanted to have visions or be an oracle or whatever, you could literally do it. You just have to practice, because the connection is not non-existent. It's not a disconnect in the sense that we are no longer interfaced with it. It's actually a matter of how we think about it and how our thoughts constrict us to these boundaries. We talked earlier about we are what we are, and we get to choose, right? We're not necessarily defined by our traumas. And that's true, because once you realize, wait, that's not mine, that's my mom's, or that's my uncle's, or that's my best friend's, you can suddenly throw it away. Yeah, well, not even distance, you can totally obliterate it because it has no power. You realize that it's nothing. Same thing. It's the same thing. If you're talking about connection and sleeping or whatever, which is how I interpreted it, there is no disconnect in a literal sense. It's a disconnect in a mental sense. You got to think differently. You got to think more critically. Yeah.
The third one, I got actually two, and I don't know if I should end it on a fun note or on a deep note. Pick one, fun or deep.
Say that again?
Pick one, fun or deep. How should be the question? Because I got two.
Every time you say it, it cuts out. Every time.
Oh. So I have two questions, but I just want to pick one, and I don't know if I should go with the fun one or with the deep one. Choose, help me choose.
Well, I think all deep things are fun, so let's go with the deep one.
Okay, so the deep one is How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by Al Green.
Okay, so how can you mend a broken heart without?
By Al Green, I mean the song.
Oh, the song. Right, because the theme. Okay. How can you mend a broken heart? Where's a good part to start on that one? Like we'll start at the root of it, I guess. You got to think critically about what your feelings are. Like, what are they? What are feelings? I'm asking. What are feelings to you?
Feelings to me.
Yeah.
Emotions, based on some past experiences that actually make myself identify them as emotions.
Yes. Yeah. I would actually say pretty much the same thing. I would actually clarify the language a little bit to a scientific term, because it is science. Your feelings are environmental stimulus. In meditation, the number one teaching is you are not your emotions. And even though you feel reactive, you do not need to be reactive. And actually, the sum of a person is the interaction that person has with those emotions. So emotions are special environmental stimuli. They're not bad or good. If it's cold, you might go, I hate the cold.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate the heat. I hate summers. I can't do it. But what you're doing is you're conflating meaning with suggestion, right? You're making them the same thing. So when you're talking about feelings, you're actually talking about how you interpret feeling. Not feelings as in emotions, feeling as in how your body reacts to that stimulus. Yeah. And so, sorry, my headphones died. So when you think about it, you, again, I said it earlier, actually, you only have one emotion, one, and it's discomfort. But sometimes if you interpret it the right way or the wrong way, there is no right or wrong. Morality is ambiguous and it's relative. It is a happy feeling or a sad feeling. And so when you get to the base of it, you actually realize that all of your experiences are just that. They're suggestions. Because when you got hurt by that person, your body said, hey, whoa, 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 that's dangerous. And you went, oh, God, I hate people. I don't want to interact with people. I don't want to do this. Blah, 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 blah. You get so excited about your own thoughts. And if you're not conscious or aware of the things that truly affect you, then you start going, but I am this way. I am sad. I am hurt. I am. And then you go, the world is against me, angry with me. I deserve this, whatever. But it's all meaningless. Because actually, I like using hot and cold to teach this specific thing, because when you're cold, you go, oh, it's too bad. It sucks. You're too hot. Oh, fuck, it sucks. I'm sweating out of my skin. But they're not bad. There's no morality in temperature.
Yeah.
There's no morality in temperature. What it is your body going, hey, it's cold. By the way, I'm liquid and I'll freeze. Hey, it's hot. And by the way, I'm liquid and I'll boil. And it's all about preserving your tissues.
Yeah.
Because your tissues are what make up your body. And if you don't have a body, then you can't be alive. Which isn't strictly true either. You have a spiritual existence. You have a consciousness in the soul. Those things are not tethered specifically to the body, although they can be. And so you're never really dead. And it's a very interesting thing to look at it, because then all of a sudden you go, wait, so nothing means anything? Yes, actually. Because when you're cold, you start feeling anxious and whatever. And you realize, oh, wait, no. My body is contracting muscles to make me aware that I'm cold, because otherwise I wouldn't know I'm cold. And then I could suffer from damage, from frost, right? From hypothermia, from lower body temperatures, and you need your core temperature up to a certain degree. And that's important for the physical body. The thing that happens is that you start going, well, if I feel this way, then it must be true. Yeah. When in fact your body's going, hey, it's cold. You might want to go find a warm place. It doesn't mean you're going to die.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. But you think you might, you know? And if you're sweating a lot, you get angry and your mood changes and all these things because you're sweating so much. But you notice how people can get really comfortable with being super hot or super cold.
Yeah. Like
it's all relative.
Using saunas and stuff like that.
Yeah. People love it. They go sit. They're like, well, I can handle this for 10 minutes. You know, I can go outside and play in the snow for a little bit and come back. Well, that's a choice. You chose to interact with it that way. Yeah. So you get over a broken heart, or any kind of trauma, any kind of trauma, by understanding that fact. And then you ask yourself, well, what am I feeling then? And you go, well, all my feelings are my interactions, or actually reactions, to my body trying to help me out. Mm-hmm. My body's telling me, don't talk to that person. They will hurt you. Don't eat that food. It will make you sick. Mm-hmm. That's why when you eat something bad, you automatically have a bad association with that thing forever, and you may never eat it again. Mm-hmm. For me, it's mushrooms or like olives. I don't like them. Avocado, don't like it. I just have a weird mind-body connection with that. Mm-hmm. But once you realize that these things are actually nothing, there's actually a backlash. And then people go, well, if it means nothing, then nothing means anything, and everything's futile, and blah, 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 blah. And so you do this whole of meaninglessness, and you forget that everything is meaningful. Literally everything is meaningful. It doesn't mean that everything's meaningless. What it means is that you actually create your own meaning. And so by that token of information, you can go, okay, well, I am upset with that person, but how's that affecting me? Oh, it's making me go into panic. Okay, well, then that's something I need to rectify. If somebody says something and it pisses me off, why do I feel that way? Oh, because somebody that I knew who knew somebody else once said to me something that they had no right saying. Well, then don't take it personally. You're responsible for you, not for other people. They can't make you do anything. And that was a lesson that it took me forever to learn that lesson. But once I learned it, like, all of a sudden you're free to do whatever the fuck you want. You can do anything. You can become anybody. And also the thing is too is like there's also you have to be wary of that change you make in yourself once you have these bits of knowledge, because once you truly see it, you can't turn away from it. It makes everything worse if you run away, and it is very, very heavy. It's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to be so critical all the time, but healthily so. So you break your own understanding of what a broken heart is.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You drop it from a 12-story building and watch it shatter. And then you go, okay, let's go build something new. And that can be really hard. But ultimately, you just center yourself around the intentions you have for your life, follow through with those intentions, and understand that you have a choice in everything, even if it doesn't feel like it. And that even though it may feel meaningless, it's not meaningless at all. That's the whole point. There's meaning in it, right? That's why you're being made aware of it.
Awesome.
But that's how you mend a broken heart.
No, yay!
You realize it wasn't ever broken.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, let me know what's up next to you for you. What's next? What's your for the rest of the?
Right now, I think this one's charged enough. Right now, I am starting to dip my toes into like commissioned painting.
Okay.
I do a lot of meditation drawing or automatic drawing, and my painting is fun when I do it that way, to just express that way. And I'm actually working on my first commission painting right now, and that's really fun. I am working on my YouTube stuff, which you mentioned the letters of the alphabet. People jokingly are like, when does it end? Well, yeah, it ends when we get to the ampersand. And which a lot of people don't know that was actually a letter in the alphabet at one point, ampersand. So when we get to the ampersand, it's done. And those are basically just moments of my life, things that I find important enough to sit down and document. I don't know if I can get in trouble for saying some things, but I'll just claim ignorance right now. But the first couple are landscape shots. I just like the passing of time. I think people need to sit down more often and be aware of their surroundings and watch things change, because everything's in constant motion. And once you realize that maybe you shouldn't be so steadfast onto what you consider yourself to be or what your life to be, and you should be more open to the flow of things. And right now I'm really looking at nature in a different way, and documenting my experience with that. I did read a bit of Dune in that, which everybody should fucking read, because man was 100 years beyond his time. By man, I mean Frank Herbert. But Paul Atreides is someone we should all look up to. And I believe that. So I read a part of that. And then recently I did one of the snow here. The first snow of the season, real snow of the season. I guess there was one before, but it is, this one's different. I don't really know how to describe how it was different. It was fuller. It was more like a, hey, I'm snowing, and not like a, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But there is a psychedelic conversation underlying that one, and so I'm kind of just doing my own red book kind of situation. I find it interesting to explore certain things, and when I meditate, I personify my my frame of reference at the moment, as a specific character, and I talk to them. So I think I'm actually working on a maybe visual component to that, or a maybe a literary component to that, and just documenting those recordings I have of my meditations.
And usually, do you plan, like, I don't know, put up together a band or have more shows or shows on your own?
Um, for music or
Yeah, musically.
musically, I
What's the
my entire
plan?
relationship to music has changed. I'm much more in the visual space right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I'm working on funding a uh, feature film which I
Mm-hmm.
helped write with one of my buddies about loss and dealing with loss and the relativistic nature of morality. It's a neo-Western, so I'm working on that, which is pretty fun. I'm currently writing something that I've been writing for almost 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a mass. It's like an epic film that's like 4 hours long, and it is like a exploration of what happens after death and how we interface with each other here and now. And that's a really big thing for me. And it's an accumulation of all the lessons I've learned over the last 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on that. And then musically, I don't have much in the way. I kind of produce randomly for people
Mm-hmm.
just for fun if I like the content they're putting out. I have a call tomorrow with somebody who I'm trying to produce for just at least one song. I really like the positive content of the stuff they're putting out, and really kind of focusing on positively motivating and instructing people in the ways of the spiritual nature of human existence and the psychological,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like there's a lot of things going on right now that we need to talk about. And right now I'm also, really kind of downloading as many things as I can uh, as to how people are dealing with it. So, like I'm watching We Are Who We Are right now, which is fucking phenomenal, and which is on HBO, and it's fucking beautiful, and everything about it is heart wrenching. I'm one episode away from the finish of that season. If they're doing another season, I would hope so. If not, maybe they did enough. They surely did enough. But I was just like totally emotionally devastated by this penultimate episode, because it's exactly the I get emotional when I see people doing what I'm trying to do, because I'm like, okay, so I'm not the only one, and that's great. I don't want to be the only one. I'm not special in my view. I'm just special in my expression. So
Yeah.
I need we all need we all learn differently. So it's good to have people out there doing things differently than me. But right now, yeah, I'm working on my film career because I really just need to start explaining things that I've learned and giving people tools, because really the ultimate reality is that we don't have the tools to deal with the things that we are dealing with, and it's very easy to give people those tools. We just have to take the time to do it, which is why every one of these interviews is so goddamn long. One, because I talk, because I'm a conversationalist, but also because if there's something that can be said
Why not?
on what we're talking about, why not say
Yeah.
it? Otherwise, what was the point of talking about any of this, right? Um, but yeah, so I'm doing that. So I'm like really into visual art right now. I painting, film. I was thinking about doing some more narrative stuff with the A to Z stuff, but what I wanted to give people with A to Z is a chance to sit down and reflect, and it works, and it's crazy. I was looking at the statistics for the channel, and I think it's something like 1.1 thousand minutes as of 28 days recorded watching. So maybe not a lot of people are watching, but enough are watching it meaningfully, right? They're playing it on repeat. And yeah, I talked about psychedelics before too. Right now, I'm very interested in psychedelics. I'm taking the time to spend half of my day meditating, and half of my not half of my time, but because there's no real way to quantify that time you're spending, but you know just exploring what the earth gave us to understand everything, and
Mm.
seeing how that medicine works. And right, I've been just hanging out with some shrooms and taking some time for that, which I think everybody should do. um, but you didn't hear it from me. I'm not doing that because it's definitely illegal and you shouldn't do it. And you wouldn't want yourself to be healed or your mind to be open. So like, don't even bother. But I mean, look, you could drink yourself into a stupor, or you can go on a trip where you just love everything and you realize how much you could actually love everything and how easy it actually is. And then maybe, I don't know, become part of the solution. But, that's on whoever doesn't want to do illegal drugs. So, which, drugs, it's a plant, by the way. It's not a drug. It's not LSD, which also there's nothing wrong with. But really just kind of like exploring things. I do a lot of reading. So I'm really thinking of the best way to articulate solutions to the problems that we're facing as a society right now, as a civilization.
Yeah.
Not just America. I mean the world.
Worldwide.
Worldwide. And that sounds huge, but
Yeah.
that is my purpose here. So I'll do that as far as I can. And
Cool.
yeah. So maybe music, we'll find out. Maybe I will write something, but at this point I'm just helping other people articulate their visions while I work on a different aspect of my career. And when a chant comes out, I think everybody will understand what I'm saying. There's a lot of love and intention put into that. That whole thing.
I look forward to watching everything you're gonna put out.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk about these things, and for first of all inviting me, and it's really great that you are asking deep questions. Like it's cool. It's cool. It's good to be able to sit down and be asked what my actual opinion is on things, and not get the eye roll. Not that many people do it, but I'm long-winded. I will answer every aspect of that question that you asked. So I appreciate you taking the time to reach out and schedule this and figure it out, because this is fun. I liked it.
I'm happy that you enjoyed this interview, and time is just relative, so I don't
Yeah, right? I know.
feel like a discussion between somebody that I knew for a long time, although we don't know each other. But
look, we've only been it says we've been live for 2 hours and 41 minutes, which is a while in normal time, but we've really covered years of therapy and solutions and all these things, and that to me is why time is meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
you hit 5 years just now, and that's great, but that's also the thing that we can all give to each other is that life experience, because
Mhm.
otherwise when we're all one, we're all going to figure it out. People are slower than others, but we're all here together working towards one goal, and that goal is awareness and constructive solutions to emotional and psychological problems. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'll wrap this up for those who are still watching us. Anyway, the replay will be available, so that's not a problem for those who couldn't follow us till the
Yeah.
end.
And watch it again if you can.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Help us all out.
Guys, I'm gonna meet you again on Thursday with the next episode of Backstagers. I don't know what will it be. Maybe it'll be a regular interview that I shot in person with people from here, or another live interview on YouTube. But thanks for taking the time to look at us tonight, and follow Jamie on at the links in the description and everything that he's doing, and us as well. So that's it. Have a good night, everyone, or a good day wherever you are in the world. And don't forget to spread love, not hate.
Yeah, spread it. Spread love.
Love,
You don't lose anything doing it. Just turn to the person next to you and just say, "Hey, I love you."
love
Mean
is free, love is
it.
free, love
Love
is
is free. It's easy. It's a trick if you think it's
So bye.
hard.